You're watching BCTV. We're all about Brantford. You're watching BCTV, Brantford Government Television, a service of Brantford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Brantford.
So then we'll call this meeting of the Brantford Planning and Zoning Commission to order. I'll introduce members of our commission and staff, and when I say your name, please acknowledge. John Lust.
John Lust, Commissioner, here.
Joe Chadwick.
Joe Chadwick is present.
Joe Vayuso.
Joe Vayuso's here.
Fred Russo.
Present.
Paul Higgins.
I'm here.
Marcy Pelusi.
Marcy Pelusi here.
And I am Chuck Anders, Chair. Our staff this evening is our town planner, Harry Smith. Harry, you here?
I am here.
And our assistant planner, Caitlin Piazza. Caitlin?
I'm here as well.
And before we read the notice of public hearing, I'm going to ask Caitlin once again to explain how to participate in this matter for the those participating in the public hearing, whether it be the applicants or public. Caitlin.
Caitlin Piazza, Assistant Town Planner. So this meeting is being recorded. There's no requirement to have your camera on, but if you would like to participate in the public hearing portion of a specific application, you can do so by phone or through computer. To raise your hand by phone, you just press *9 and that will raise your hand in the participants bar, and the host will unmute you in the order that you raise your hand. You can also join or participate by computer. We prefer that you use the raise hand feature, which can be accessed at the bottom. If you toggle over the bottom of the screen, click participants, and next to your name there should be a raise hand feature. Alternatively, if you have a problem with that, technically, the chat feature is also available. We just ask that you put that comment to everyone and not in a private chat, and we'll try to read them out if they're applicable to the application. And I think that's it. Oh, and please state your name every time you speak. And I think that's it.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Caitlin. Harry, do you want to read the notice of public hearing?
Sure. Harry Smith, Town Planner. Legal notice, Town of Brantford. The Planning and Zoning Commission of the Town of Brantford, Connecticut hereby gives notice of a public hearing to be held on Thursday, July 2nd, 2020 at 7 p.m. by remote technology, as authorized by Executive Orders 7B and 7I, to consider the following. Application number 20-5.4, PDD modification, master plan amendment proposing multifamily residential as a use in place of an improved hotel use and associated changes for the portion of the Brantford River PDD master plan located at 4-6 Indian Neck Avenue, Tidal Basin LLC, care of Edward Crowley, applicant and owner. Item number 2, application number 20-4.3, 4-lot re-subdivision located at 41 Brainerd Street and 54 Kenyon Street. Statewide Development LLC, applicant and owner.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Harry. We will follow our normal format for public hearings. We have 3 public hearings scheduled for this evening. Our normal format is that the applicant goes first, make its presentation, explain its plans. It could be the owner or the representative, the engineer, its consultants. After the applicant has made its presentation, we turn it over to staff and the commission. Staff will summarize its staff report on the application, and commission members will open up for commission members who have any questions. At that point, we'll open up to the public. We ask, again, Caitlin reviewed the process to get recognized. We ask that you, again, everyone state their name before speaking. Public will make their comments. Then we allow the applicant to respond to the public comment. We may or may not close the public hearing depending on it goes. Typically, certainly not unusual for bigger applications, larger applications to last more than one public hearing. With that, we'll turn to our first item on the agenda, which is Russo Real Estate, 58 East Industrial Road, and this is a special exception for a new contractor's business and storage yard and grading and earth removal. Is the applicant ready to proceed on that? And Chuck Anders here, it appears that Mr. Preddy is ready to.
Good evening, Jim Preddy, Criscolo Engineering. Everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yep. Good. I stayed in the office this time because it was so bad at home last time. So yes, if Caitlin, I logged on also as Criscolo Engineering, and if I could share a screen with that account, then I think we can do it.
Caitlin Piazza, you're good.
So there we go. Okay, so this is 58 East Industrial Road, which is on the corner of East Industrial Road along here and Pin Oak Drive. East Industrial Road is a dead end here. Pin Oak Drive goes to the north and connects to Sycamore Way. It's a 3¼ acre site with a larger wetland area here that's mostly off-site. It's on the Bittersweet property. The net area, taking the wetland area and the steep slopes along here out, is 3 acres. Let's see, next page. The second page is erosion controls that will need to get installed before we do anything else. Silt fence around the edge of the development, anti-tracking pads, temporary stockpile for topsoil. This is the layout plan. So the plan of development is the main entrance would be here off of the cul-de-sac in East Industrial Road. You come into a small paved area for visitors and a few employee vehicles on this side. This is the building, which would have a small office and a garage space. This hatched area here would be processed stone, and I'm going to zoom in so that the hatch doesn't look so crazy. There'd be a parking area here for some of the registered vehicles, like their pickup trucks and dump trucks. The rest of the area in here would be for, a trailer or a machine, excavator when they need to. We'll get back to that in a minute. The other entrance is actually through the neighboring property, which we've gotten written permission for, and they will provide an easement to access down through this property into this lower level. There's actually there's some retaining walls going on in between here. So this lower level will be for bulk storage of some materials like processed stone, sand, 3/4 inch crushed stone, 1 inch, some, gravel fill, that sort of thing. And then the last piece that's here is a detention area that we're basically creating out of retaining walls. And so this area will run off through a paved leak off and then down through a we'll call it a forebay, but a beginning area that can trap sediments here before it goes through the stone and into another settling area before it goes to the outlet control structure that connects to the existing drainage outlet that's in this right of way. And I've done it this way because, as it says in this section, these type of yards end up acting like more or less like a construction site indefinitely. And what this allows us to do is to come in here with a small skid steer and clean this out on a regular basis when silts accumulate, rather than some sort of structures that have to be vacuumed out and scheduled. They can clean this out as they need it. So because there will already be the equipment on the site. So I've tried to create sort of a user-friendly stormwater situation here that they can clean out on a regular basis as they need to. The next page shows the grading plan, and you can see that there's a couple of walls here. None of the walls are very high in here. They're only 2 feet out in the front here, so basically landscape walls. In between here, they're tiered, and each tier is only about 3 feet high. Around the outside, they're a little bit larger, the maximum at 8 feet at one point, but the point of all of this was to try to limit the development, kind of pen it in, keep it from sprawling, and also keep from getting into this slope area in the back. We're basically ending our development before we get into that. We have also some details, and it's a pre-engineered steel building, very similar to all the other ones in the development. These are plans that I've created, or elevations that I've created, to kind of give you a sense for what the building looks like. Again, very small. We're only about 28 feet at most here, and this will be lower than the road, so you won't see, it won't feel like it's very big either. And then we also have, and I believe John Cunningham's on here with us. We had John do a landscaping plan, and I could let him speak to that if he's on.
I am on, Jim, thanks.
You want me to keep control here, or do you want to?
Can everyone see? Good evening, John Cunningham from TEC Landscape Design. Jim, if you're done with the engineering, I'll just move into the landscape plan if everyone's okay with that.
Okay.
Once again, John Cunningham. We see the proposed building. Jim went over. I read through all the staff comments on what the Brantford building regulations would be. We've shown the street trees. I believe there are 12 or 13 of them along the street and around the corner. We've used 2 different varieties. We've used single stem river birch and pin oak, which I thought was a good variety because the name of the road is pin oak. The pin oaks are on the corner of the buildings. The river birch are clumped in the middle. The pin oak run again on East Industrial Road. We have added some evergreen screening along the perimeters of the building. This is going to be either straight Juniperus virginiana, which is red cedar, or one of the subspecies of red cedar. It's going to be placed along here. Sizes of all the material are listed on my plant list here. And we've continued the evergreen screening down around the corner on the cul-de-sac of East River also. Okay. The front of the building will have I believe it's 5 or 6 feet of a landscape, like a foundation planting. Be very simple. Will be low evergreen ground cover, probably some type of low deciduous plant that will grow in there. I think on the plant list I spec'd out some spirea and some ornamental grasses. We've added a second island area in the parking area. And I showed a little speck on the guardrail that would go in between the upper area of the site and the lower area. This area where Jim's showing us along here, so the guardrail would keep people from going over the retaining wall. It will just be a crushed stone area, the different elevations of the property. Simple landscape plan. I think it'll look very nice when it's all finished. I think it'll help both screening to the storage area and also softening of the building's parking area from East Industrial Road.
Jim Preddy, John, you all set for now?
I think unless anyone has any questions on the landscaping, which I can answer now or at the end, I think I'm all set. Okay.
Okay. So Jim Preddy again, Criscolo Engineering. Get back to the layout plan. So we've received wetland approval already for this project. We've received WPCA approval. So what we're proposing is a contractor's yard that I believe we meet all the requirements, and we're in the back corner of an industrial subdivision. I mean, I think this is the ideal location for this type of use. This is exactly, I think, the location that was thought of when that section was created in the regulations. So at this point, I guess I'll take any questions from the commission.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Jim, you mentioned just I didn't know if you're going to talk about it, the vehicle parking. Again, a contractor's yard, there's usually a lot of vehicles around. You mentioned there's 22, including some large vehicles, and they're all going to be parked in the front part there. I noticed that you have 14 spaces and there's a lot of other space. So I guess the main question is, do you have enough space to, again, there's only 14 spaces, and they're kind of regular spaces. You got lots of big stuff there. So, the obvious question, do you have enough space to park all the vehicles in the event? And I understand some are going to be off-site many times, but there's gotta be times where they're on there. So maybe you can just go over that.
Yes. So Jim Preddy again. So Mr. Fisher's business, for the most part, the vast majority of the equipment goes from site to site. Doesn't very often come back here. But this area here is, so they can pull in and turn around and come out. The spaces over here are just for actual vehicles that are registered, have license plates. They can park here because they're actually vehicles, they're not equipment. This area here, so they can pull in, turn around, do what they got to do. They only come back here for minor repairs. Anything major, they get sent out to someplace else. So they do some minor maintenance here, some routine stuff, but no serious maintenance. We did put a list of the type of equipment that he generally has. Again, most of the equipment goes from site to site. Half of the pickup trucks go home with the employees. So there's only a few employee vehicles that really will sit out here. I don't know. Did I answer your question, Chuck?
Chuck Anders, Chair. Yeah, I assume, I don't know the dimensions. Some of the vehicles, you have 2 large excavators, 3 mini excavators, 2 skid steers, front loader tractor. I'm assuming, you want to have space in there. That's the reason you're getting a new space, is because you want to be able to store it. But I just don't know the dimensions. I can see the parking space dimensions. I assume if you had to, there is space in that area that you're talking about.
Yes.
So if you have the off nights and whatever, that you can park it. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Chuck Anders, Chair. At this point, Caitlin, did you want to go over your staff report?
Caitlin Piazza, Assistant Town Planner. Sure.
Should I stop?
Oh. So most of my initial comments were addressed by this application that was submitted. Primarily, they had to do with a little bit more clarification of the use, which was an expanded statement of use was submitted. So that clarified that. A lot of it also had to do with landscaping. So they brought in John Cunningham, and all of the landscaping requirements are satisfied, except for one, and it's the landscaping buffer that abuts the wetland. Because it is a wetland and no clearing would be allowed, and there's existing vegetation, they've asked for a waiver for that. which would have to be one of the findings of the commission. Also, just wanted to bring the commission's attention to the exterior elevations. There is some latitude you have there as far as building design. Another thing that was just submitted was the lighting plan. I believe that was submitted yesterday, so I haven't had so much time to review that, but it seems to generally be regulations with a few areas, primarily around where the material storage is that exceed the maximum foot candle allowance. And I've added a few conditions of approval to kind of address those discrepancies. And then I think the other thing I wanted to point out was the chain link fence around the area. It's proposed as I believe, a stainless steel chain link fence with fabric through it, and it would be suggestion of staff to either.
Caitlin, can I, once again, John Cunningham, it's not stainless steel.
Oh, sorry.
It's chain link.
Chain link, okay. Whatever that's made of. Anyway,
power coated chain link. Stainless steel would cost Nick about maybe $1 million plus for the fencing of his property, which I don't think he wants to do.
Okay, so it's not as nice as stainless steel. It's a very typical chain link fence, and we would just ask the commission to consider maybe making it black coated so it blends in with the landscaping a little bit more. It's for security, not for buffering or screening, so I think it would just blend in a little bit better.
I think we'd be fine with a black coated chain link fence with a black slat to make it look nice and clean.
The slat, could you expand on that?
It provides screenage.
Is it
It goes vertical.
fabric or is it actual?
Typically Harry Smithtown plan. I mean, usually there's some kind of aluminum piece of metal that goes right through the chain link. They can get banged up. They can become, in my experience, a lot of commissions, they've sort of frowned on that. And really, if you're going for some kind of buffering element to the fence, looking at, vinyl fencing or some other kind of wood product. There is going to be a fairly substantial amount of landscaping here. The only part it seemed like it might benefit to have the fence provide some screening would be between the vehicle equipment storage area and Pin Oak Drive. So the landscape, I think, as you're in the parking spaces in front of the building is more substantial, and probably as it grows up will provide very significant buffering of the cars there. Up to the commission, though, I don't know what you folks would like to see there.
John Cunningham, again, on the perimeters of the property, I agree with Barry. I think the slats between the fencing, even though they offer almost 100% privacy from 6 feet or whatever the height of the fence was, 6 or 8 feet or 4 feet down, I think our landscaping will sufficiently soften all the perimeters of the property. So I'm with Harry. It does get beat up after a period of time. I think a black power-coated chain link fence with the evergreen buffer that we put on the outside will be a nice, clean look to that area. And do remember, Jim brought it up, this property sits at the end of East Industrial Road. So it's behind the property is really just a natural vegetated area. To the, I think it's the east of the cul-de-sac, it will be covered. And then whatever happens next door to Mr. Fisher's property, I think our screening is very adequate for that area.
John, Harry Smithtown planner again. Could you explain the landscaping between the vehicle equipment area and Pin Oak Drive? I'm not quite focusing on what's going to be sort of at the lower level. I know you're going to have street trees there, but.
Okay, because that is not really a storage area. It's really more of the area that's going to be, let's just say it's pretty close to grade or it's down a bit. I use street trees, and I'm just looking at the plan in my office. I added sweet fern, Harry. Sweet fern and I believe plethora, which are two native pieces of material that I would plant 2 to 3 feet from the fence line to act as a buffer at the base of the shade trees. So we're not suggesting any big evergreen trees to run down that Pin Oak Drive. I think it's going to look a little bit nicer if it's shade trees, deciduous piece of plant material at the base, and leave the evergreen trees on the sides of the property.
So how high would those go up? Again, Harry Smith, Town Planner, eventually when they get,
To probably a maximum height of about 4 feet.
okay. So, I mean, equipment that happens to be there is, going to be a little bit screened at the ground level, perhaps, by it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll have the trees, and that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't know what the commission's thoughts are about that, but there is, even though this is at the end of the industrial park, this is the access around, and there are, a mix of different industrial uses out there, biotech companies. There's all kinds of folks that have, frankly, taken a lot of care with their, the appearance of some of these properties too. So I'm a little concerned about making sure it does blend in. It looks like a great landscaping job. I want to make sure it really achieves, what is needed, and maybe fencing would help a little, some decorative fencing just along the vehicle equipment area.
Harry, let me answer that. John Cunningham, once again, if you picture the pin oak, the branch structure might start, let's say, at 5 feet from ground level. Okay? So you have a tree that's in full leaf from 5 feet up. Then you have a piece of shrub material that's going to get to planted at 2 to 2.5, 3 feet tall. It's going to get to 4 feet. There's a very small space that you could look into there. If the board felt more comfortable about running some type of slats or screening through the chain link fence along Pin Oak, that's fine with us.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Are you proposing any security on the site off the building for the equipment that's there?
Jim Preddy, what do you mean by security? Both yards.
Well, I mean, one loader could be upwards of $70,000. It's very expensive equipment. If I were the owner, I would want a little bit of visibility into the yard just so that the police could drive by and make sure there's nothing going on in the yard. I assume that the perimeter fence is going to be locked. So, I'm satisfied with one solution to do a black vinyl clad. The pin oaks have a good lower branch structure, maybe, a few shrubs. I think there's a level of screening there. I'm a little more concerned with the aesthetics of the building. I'd like to see some masonry on the front or side of the building to, more importantly, and I would think that he might want to have some kind of security system to watch over the yard. Just, and I'm saying security because that's my sense of, unless he's putting his most expensive equipment in the building at night, I'm not really clear how the building's functioning other than is it storage for the business? Is there any level of commercial, retail going on there? Or is it just his office use? I would like a little clarification on that.
Jim Preddy, Criscolo Engineering. Yeah, there's no retail element here.
Okay.
And as I've said, there's overnight, there's generally very little equipment here. It's just if something's here in between a job, generally speaking, the equipment goes from job to job. We do have both yards fenced in with gates. There will be some lighting that'll stay on for most of the time, just for security reasons. And, we haven't discussed it, but adding a security cameras to the building is very easily done at this point.
Candace, Chair, I did notice that Mr. Fisher, the owner, did raise his hand. I don't know if he wants to speak.
Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, so I'll probably have cameras in the building, not unlike the building I have now. And basically every day, my guys will leave there with the compactor or the tools they need to go to the job. So very little equipment comes and goes from there. All that small stuff will be inside. They'll load their trucks and they'll. The other thing I wanted to point out is there's a lot of discussion about screening it from the road, but the building is generally, you're going to drive down to the end of East Industrial in that cul-de-sac, and you're going to drive straight in from that lower elevation. So the building in essence is in a hole off of Pin Oak anyway. So a 5-foot tall tree, I don't know the height of the trees, John, but a 5-foot tall tree is going to screen, or a 10-foot tall tree is going to screen the whole building from the road anyway. So unless you're really working on looking in there, you're not going to see what's going on in there anyway.
Agreed.
So can, Marcy Paluzzi here, could Jim clarify, like say on Pin Oak at the front elevation, but what's the elevation on Pin Oak versus the finished floor of the building versus the lower storage area? Like what's the grade differential? You know, especially on, that was another of my questions, especially on the bins, you know, how high are those walls?
You'll never see the bins from the street. They're so much lower than the road, you'll never know we're there.
Yeah, I just was curious what that grade differential was between the upper side and the lower.
28 on the first floor.
Jim Preddy again. So we'll just pick a spot like in the middle of the site on Pin Oak. The grade is about 136, right in the middle of the Pin Oak frontage.
Okay.
The floor of the garage is at 127.5, so we're about 9 feet down there. And then the lower level where the stone is about another 10 feet down. So by the time, you know, with the screening that John has on there, you'll probably never even know that there's a lower level there.
So you actually have is that a retaining wall at that front edge of the parking? It looks like 29 to 31. You're doing like a 2-foot retaining wall?
Along Pin Oak?
It's on the parking lot, on the bottom of the parking lot. You have a top of wall and a bottom of wall, 131 to 129. That
Yes.
kind of,
Jim Preddy, we did put a landscaping wall in there to try to keep the grade up higher. Again, just to more set this down to keep it less visible really from the road, you know, less of a presence.
okay. Yeah, I'm seeing it
At the
now.
end of chair, are there any other questions or comments from commission members? For staff?
Oh, I have
Fred
more
Russo?
landscape.
Fred
Okay.
Russo, Fred?
I just want to say, clarify that I am not related to the applicant. I don't know the applicant. We're not related in any way. So, you know, we do share the same surname, but just so that it's understood that it's no family member coming and applying before our commission.
Standards chair, thank you for that.
Yeah, Jim Preddy again, just to clarify, Russo Real Estate owns the lot currently, and Mr. Fisher will be purchasing after approval. So he's the applicant.
Okay. Thank you, Jim.
I had one more landscape question. Sorry, John, you're specifying a wildlife mix, but I'm not clear where that's going. Is that for the basin or is that in the lower areas beyond the storage yard?
Paul, if you look at it, I apologize, it's not clearly really labeled on my plan. The lawn area on the landscape plan would be maintained lawn area. That would just be probably a fescue blend seed that Nick would maintain. The New England Conservation wildlife mix would be on any disturbed areas on both sides of the property and going back to the wetland area. So any area that's disturbed back there is not going to be maintained. It's just going to be a natural seeded area.
So that's all the area behind the yard and around the
Yes,
basin.
correct.
And
That's correct.
how much of that area is actually going to have to be cleared to accommodate the construction? Or can you make that wood edge as closer to the
Right.
parking?
Wayne?
Jim might be able, once again,
John's
John
got-
Cunningham, Jim might be able to answer that question better. I took my tree line just at the edge of his basin, which I'm sure that we're going to have to clear to the edge of the basin. So any of that area around the basin that gets disturbed would get the seed. I would keep it to a minimum through construction.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the setbacks to the wetlands, even though we don't regulate wetland. I'm not sure that, it appears like you're in the upland review area and minimizing impact. I mean, obviously it's approved, but.
Jim Preddy, yes, we are somewhat in the review area, and they have reviewed it. If you look at the grading plan where we show the silt fence line, that's as far as we think we need to go, and it may not even be that far because they'll be working from the top. There'll really be no opportunity to work from the lower, work from the low side up because it's too steep. So everything will be happening from the top side.
Okay.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Any other questions or comments from commission members or staff? Not that, yes, Harry?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. The only thing I'd like to add is that we just want to keep in mind that you're approving a use here. So, I mean, the way Mr. Fisher's running the property, everything that was said about the yard makes perfect sense, but it could be run very differently by someone else who may own it in the future. So I just want to keep that in mind. So.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Harry. Any other questions, comments from commission members or staff?
Caitlin Piazza. Marcy, I just wanted to, did you mention something about adding masonry to the base of the
Yeah,
building?
I just think it would be more consistent with the quality of the buildings in the other IG2 areas to add some masonry on the, you know, the front or the foundation, but I certainly understand the response. But those metal buildings, especially at the ground level, can get dinged up pretty easily, pretty quick.
Yeah, Jim Preddy, I mean, the two sides you're talking about are where we have the landscaping that would get the brick treatments anyway. And I think the landscaping that John picked kind of goes sounds like it's going to reach up about 4 or 5 feet. So most of that would get hidden. There are these metal buildings do have multicolor schemes where you could color them so that they look like there's different materials. So, the final colors haven't been picked yet, but I don't, honestly, I think putting the brick at the lower level, except for maybe right near the door, would end up getting hidden anyway.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you. Any other questions or comments from commission members or staff? If not, then we'll open it up to the public. Any member of the public wish to comment, please raise your hand or enter the chat or do whatever Caitlin told you to do.
Caitlin Piazza, I'm going to unmute Perry Maraska. He's the only hand I see.
Okay, it's not unmuted yet.
Hi, Perry Maresca, Economic Development. Fishers currently have an established business in town for years. They're on Leeds Island Road, and all the talk about hiding the building and the equipment. Currently, you can drive right by their establishment. You don't even notice that they're there. So I'm sure they'll be cognizant of that in the new facility. And I think this is a good location for what they do in comparison to some of the other buildings that are in the area. It is not conflicting with some of the other things you see along Pin Oak and whatnot. So I just think from an economic development point of view, it is an asset to the town if they can continue in town in a large location. Thank you.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Maresca. Any other member of the public wish to comment? Caitlin, anyone notifying you? Raising your hand?
Caitlin, no, I don't see anything in the chat or any other hands raised or anybody waving at me. So I think
Okay. Okay, with that then, we can close the public portion of this public hearing, and Mr. Preddy and our applicant or Mr. Cunningham, any other comments? Have you reviewed the staff report, and do you have any questions about it?
Jim Preddy again. I have reviewed it. The conditions that are under the findings all seem to be pretty standard things. We don't take any exceptions to any of them.
Okay. And we talked about adding the black power-coated chain link fence or some detail about the fence.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from commission members or staff? Chuck Anders, Chair. Then we'll close this matter as a public hearing. Thank you very much. And we'll move to our second public hearing. Did I hear something? Okay. Our second public hearing, which is Statewide Development LLC, Robert Pesapani, applicant and owner, 41 Brainerd Road. This is a 4-lot re-subdivision. Is the applicant prepared to move forward with that? Someone representing the applicant on that one?
Yes, Nick McClay from Nafis & Young. I represent the project at 41 Brainerd Road. We are prepared to present tonight.
Thank you. You may proceed. Chuck Anders, Chair.
All right. How do I, oop, that's not the screen sharing thing. So there's the button. Apologies. I clicked the wrong button. That should, there we go. Is that showing the screen for everyone else? I haven't done this before. Okay, thank you. So this is a 41, the project is located at 41 Brainerd Road. It's a proposed 4-lot subdivision. It's right here on the corner of Brainerd and Matthew, right off of Route 1 and West Main Street. Brothers Harley Davidson is right about here for a quick reference. The existing property itself is empty. There used to be a house at this location, but it has been since demolished. There's a driveway here and a few old rusted out fences and a busted fence up here. Other than that, there's nothing on the property, you know, and just because I had seen it mentioned in the thing, there is a hydrant located on this road. It's right here. It is kind of hard to see with where it is positioned. And one thing to note, this, for some reason, this is the old copy. There is no line between this sanitation manhole and this sanitation manhole. There is nothing. This road comes down this way. This one goes down this way. But I will mention that, talk about that when we get to it. They have since purchased this section of land here from a Hope Carloni, and they're going to subdivide, sorry about that, subdivide it into 4 lots. You know, lot 1 over here at 6,875 square feet, lot 2 at 6,250, and lot 3 at 6,275, with lot 4 being much, much larger at, you know, 25,600 for a grand total with a buildable area of 10,800 or 10,081 square feet. There is a error on the, apologies. Go down to the site plan. There is an error on these tables. The lot 1 and 3 frontage are mislabeled on here. They are correct on here. It is 51, I'll go back up. It is the 55 feet here, 50 feet, and then 51 feet here. That was a mistake. We will correct it before final submission. And then coming back onto here, each lot is proposed to have the same style house on it, a 28 by 56 house, most roughly, you know, 1,600 square foot house. Driveway going into each of them. You know, each one will be run off of city water and a sanitation manhole. Lots 2, 3, and 4 will be able to connect directly into the existing line on Matthew. Lots 1 will have to run a pump up onto the one on Brainerd. There's each house also will come with a stormwater retention area in the back to hold the first 1 inch of rainfall across the entire roof of the building. And there were test pits dug at each one of the proposed locations, and in no location, we went 6 feet down in every location, but lot 3 was 5 feet down, and in all locations there was no water, no ledge, no anything that would cause issues. The houses themselves are 2-story proposed buildings, drive-in garage right here, a room in the back, basement room in the back, and then house, just normal rooms above it. And as part of it, there is a catch basin right here that is currently a curb top. We'll have to replace that with a CL. Each one of the houses is well under the 25% square foot lot, or not well under. The lot 2 is exactly the 25% coverage. The lot 3 is 24.99% coverage. I rounded that up to 25 on here, but it had been mentioned in the comments, so I'm bringing it up now. Also mentioned in the comments means that the frontage on lot 1 is mistaken. It should be the 16.2 that the other lots are. That's how far off these houses are from the street line. I believe the rest of them were accurate to the statement. And other than that, it's just we're going to regrade the property, obviously, to fit the houses in. We've got the silt fence going this way. We're not touching anywhere in the we're not disturbing anything in the wetlands. We've got the silt fence moved as far in as we could to ensure that from happening. Other than that, there's not much to it. Just 4 houses, and that's what they're proposed. I understand at the original wetlands meeting that lots 3 and 4 were asked to be submitted as a separate, I forget the term application, or not application. I forget the term, but they wanted to see them as a separate plan when they built them in. We're fine with that. I know with the original, based off comments, not shown on here, but based off of comments, we are okay with putting in trees along the fence line or wherever the town deems them necessary due to the exact location here. It was a question. The only comment that came from the thing that we had, actually I should probably, yeah. I think I said everything I can think about for the project. If there's any questions, I suppose.
Andrew, Chair, thank you.
Yep.
Caitlin, did you prepare the staff report, and would you like to review it?
Caitlin here. I did, and yes. So I've submitted a few different iterations of comments, and most of them have been addressed. The plans just need to be cleaned up quite a bit just to make sure it's accurately reflecting what the applicant is proposing. All of those have been noted as conditions of approval. One of the other outstanding not issues, but something the commission may wish to discuss is the open space. The applicant is proposing a fee in lieu of open space because really all that's available on the site for open space would be some wetland area that's not really connected to any other open space or town property. And I believe they would like to do that in installments, which is allowed through the subdivision regulations. One of the things I believe that has been a practice of the commission is if they decide to approve just before that fee is decided, the commission will have to approve the appraiser along with the applicant. Another comment, and I don't think I added it as a condition, but I think you probably should, is that there's no current fire flow data for the property, so that should probably be tested and the data submitted to the fire department and approved by them to make sure it's adequate. And yeah, I think we touched on everything else, just the street trees. And this is just a subdivision approval. Single family homes don't require a site plan, but the grading within 100 feet of a wetland will require a special exception application. But from what I understand, they need to go back to inland wetlands for separate approval for each of the lots except for one. I think that's it.
Chuck Anderson, Chair. Thank you, Caitlin. Questions from commission members or staff? Marcy?
So my understanding is because this is the initial split for the land that they're not required to do a landscape plan at this juncture, but when they submit for the individual plot plans, they did.
Sorry, I think I heard that, but I'm not 100% sure I got all of it. But let me take a stab.
I'm just trying to understand the process for when a landscape plan a formal landscape plan is required, because I can see that there's some large trees that are being removed. There's, you're near a wetland that hasn't been reviewed yet. And I'm just not clear whether I should be asking to see a landscape plan at this juncture or at a later juncture when they submit for the site plans for the lot, assuming that we approve it.
Yeah, at this point, it would be more just making sure they're in conformance with the street tree planting for the subdivision regulations. And then, like I said, typical single family homes usually don't need any kind of approval, but because they're within 100 feet, they'll need a special exception, and then the landscaping will kick in and the significant trees can be reviewed. So no grade, except for lot 1, I don't believe any grading, no grading can be done or trees removed.
Okay.
Maybe just wanted to talk about, preserving any trees that are on lot 1 for now. I'm sure the applicant would do their best to accommodate that.
Yeah. So the only trees we are prepared, the only significant trees we are attempting to remove are the ones kind of located right where the house is going to go. You can't really move around the house to not cut the tree.
Did you consider just doing 3 lots to, limit the impact on the upland review area for the wetlands, or, to kind of get relief? Or I guess I'm trying to understand how we're gonna not have a home that, over a building streetscape that's overwhelming in terms of size of house, in terms of whether height or density, because it is such a small zone.
It was considered, but due to the size of, I cannot recall exactly the reason off the top of my head that the developer didn't want to, didn't want to go through with 3 lots. I think he said at 4 lots is where he makes his profit, and at 3 lots, it's nothing. But I'm not 100% certain on the exact reason. I know it was considered, but the developer did not want to go through with it as 3 lots.
And the buildings would be how tall?
The buildings would be, I have it written on the thing, under the 35-foot max height. I don't know the exact height off the top of my head. I think they're still trying to figure out an exact building layout, but a typical 2-story building. 1 story, first floor garage, and then 1 floor above it.
Okay, because the 35, you could do a flatter pitch and essentially get a garage under and two more floors above that, and that's an issue we've had in R1 zones before, that I think the neighbors have an issue with the bulk, the just sheer bulk of that size building, and then that the street's a bit narrow. Concerned about the traffic and the way that would read.
I did talk with the developers about the house. They said essentially colonial style, as I said, garage, 1 floor above it, and that's what they said. Just your typical 2-story building.
Yeah, I just think it's important to limit the height under the 35 feet, even though our regulations allow for it, given the density with the side yards and to the street. Is there room on the street for parallel parking, for guests and whatnot? As I recall, it's a pretty narrow street over there.
The street's roughly 20 to 22 feet across in most areas.
Okay.
Oh, Caitlin Piazza, assistant town planner. I'm not sure if this, I don't know if he was a neighbor or just a resident, but he had actually, someone had actually emailed me about the narrow streets, and this reminds me to bring it up. I didn't get an official comment letter from the fire department, but it seems that parking is allowed on both sides of the streets. So perhaps the commission to consider that as an impact, because there's driveways and we only require 2 spaces, so it accommodates that. But for emergency services, it might present a bit of an issue. It is a 50-foot right of way, though. Just the paved area is about 20 to 22 feet.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Chuck Anders, chair. And just to clarify, this is the only thing we're approving is the division of the land. We're not approving the buildings. It's a subdivision application. And we probably will not approve the buildings. So these are models to show that what they're likely to build, but we're not actually approving the height or any particular building. That said, the lots are so small, they can't put a duplex. A lot of the issues Marcy raised about disproportionate size building in a neighbor of single family, you get these big things that certainly happen in the R1 zone, have been duplexes, and these at least lots 1 through 3 couldn't be a duplex. Lot 4 probably could, because it's got a lot of extra. Any other questions or comments?
Joe Chadwick speaking. My only comment is I am distressed that one lot is going to get a grinder and a pump when you've got a gravity situation for sewage so available. I just find that distressing that somebody's going to get stuck with that bit of maintenance. I'm not sure what the rationale is, but if we're not approving that in this application, then I'll just leave it there as a point of comment.
Yeah, there wasn't really a way of tying into the gravity system without extending the main, and they didn't. And at this point in time, they don't want to do that if they can avoid it.
How about a right of access across the neighbor's yard to tie in through the front?
Hold on, let me do the screen share again real quick, just to show that connection. Come on. So, as you can see, line 2 already ties in almost right in the beginning. So lot 1 would have to come out, run all the way across down here, run into the road, run across, run down. There's a catch basins across the road over here. This would have to tie down a little farther. We can, if that's what the town would prefer to see, we can do that. It's just, at the time, it didn't seem like the preferable option. We were trying to avoid running into any issues from any of the existing stuff in the road.
Chuck Anders, Chair. I don't know the answer to that. Is that a preferable option? I don't know, and I don't know if it's a WPCA question or how we who makes that call.
Caitlin Kaz, this is town planner. I think this came from a conversation with the assistant town engineer. Nick, is that accurate?
Jennifer Aquino, I believe. Yeah, that is who I've been talking to. Is she was the one who pointed out that sanitary line between the manhole and at the Matthew Brainerd intersection and the Matthew one did not connect, which is what prompted the redesign.
So Caitlin again. So I imagine the applicant could coordinate, or we could wait to get some comments from the town engineer, the assistant town engineer, to see the best way forward for that. If there's another option, that's up to the commission.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Okay, makes sense. Any other questions or comments from commission members or staff?
John Luss, Commissioner. I'm sorry.
Go ahead, John. I'm sorry.
That's okay, Joe. I just have a quick question. I wonder if the rest of the utilities are planned underground, the overhead electric.
We would prefer to do overhead if possible. Going underground would require all of the electrical poles are currently on the opposite side of the road, so we are trying to avoid having to dig trenches across the entire road. With a dead-end road, we don't want to trap anybody on the far end in the road or any emergencies if anything happens. But if we have to, we will do what we need. The preferable option at the moment is to try and go overhead with them.
Caitlin Kaz, assistant town planner. Section 407 of the subdivision regulations actually requires new utilities to be installed underground unless the commission determines, based on a written report by the applicant, that it's inappropriate or infeasible.
Yeah, we got that report yesterday, and I haven't had a chance to write up a full written report for it.
Well, John Luss, Commissioner, I for one would like to see it. I don't know how the rest of the commission feels.
Joe Vayuso, I also like to see something underground, but at the same time, this is an extremely tight area. It's a dead-end street, only 22 feet wide.
I'd like to hear something what the town engineer is going to say about the sewer system. Having a pump. Maybe 4 lots is going to be too much. Maybe it needs to be 3 lots.
Right.
I don't know. It just seems like we're trying to put a round peg in a square hole here. I'd like to hear from the comment from the fire marshal. I'd like to hear something from the town engineer, especially with the sewer system. I'd like to hear about how they're going to get the utilities there, like electricity. Are we going to go underground? Are you going to go overhead? There's issues here that I can see right now. Not all have answers.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Thank you, Joe. Any other questions or comments from commission members before we open up to the public? If not, then we will open it up to the public. Caitlin, does any member of the public wish to comment?
Caitlin, I'm going to unmute Bill Wren.
Hello, Bill Wren here. Just a quick question. Looks like there's a little work to do here, but if it is approved, is there any timeline for when this may happen and any idea on price point? Thank you.
Nick Nathan Young. I'm not sure off the top of my head. I would have to talk with the developer. They've got a couple other projects going on right now, so it's highly dependent on when it gets approved on when they'll be able to start. I can't speak exactly to price point, but I imagine it will be roughly similar to the existing houses in town, or the existing houses across the street.
Oh, how would you reach out to it? What point would you?
Chuck Anders, Chair, there is a limit. There's a 5 years to complete the work with a potential 5-year extension. So there's a time frame for which they have to do the work. They can do it shorter than that, but that's what it is.
All right, thank you.
Chuck Anders, Chair. Anyone else? Excuse me?
Oh, I'm sorry, Caitlin. I'm unmuting Trisha Anderson.
Hi, everybody. It's Trisha Anderson. This is my district, District 4. I'm part of the RTM. I had a couple of taxpayers come to me and ask me about the property. They've been complaining right along about the debris, the fence that's falling apart. I've written statewide a couple of letters to come and clean it up a little bit so they don't have to look at the mess every single day. They are getting a little upset about that. My concern are a couple. The corner of Matt and Brainerd, it is a very steep hill. That first lot is going to be close to the Brainerd side coming down Matthew. I'm wondering if the roof line of that first home is going to be eyeballed to the street. Because it is such a deep lot and a deep hill, I'm wondering how that's going to work, or if it's going to be so jetting up that they're going to be now looking at the side of a house. I'm not quite sure how that's going to work in that first lot because of that gully. The second question I have is, are all the driveways going to be down on Matthew? We've got 4 driveways coming down on Matthew. Or is that first lot going to have a driveway on Brainerd? I don't know how that's going to work. The second thing is they were looking at the power lines, where all the power lines were going to go, and if they're going to be looking at a transformer out their picture window, if their picture window, because they're higher, if they're going to be looking out their picture window at a transformer to support the electricity of these houses going down the hill. So they've got a few concerns about what's going to happen with this development of the 4 houses. I understand 3 would be better than 4, but I'm glad they're not proposing 6 or 7. So that's a step in the right direction. So we've got some homeowners there that are concerned about what this is going to look like. And the other question I have is, I heard duplex and then I heard single family homes. Which one is it?
Nick from Navis Young. They're single family homes, not duplexes. Duplexes was, all 4 driveways are planning on coming out from Matthew intersection. And as I stated, I'm not 100% certain on the exact height of the building right now to be able to answer the first question coming off the building. But I imagine it will be roughly similar to what had the house that had been there before. Or no, the house that had been there before.
I don't know. That's been torn down. There's just right now. The property is a little bit of a shambles. There's old mattresses, there's car parts, there's thrown away debris, old trees, Christmas trees. It's just a mess. So thank you.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Ms. Anderson. And I assume you can recommend your client to clean the place up?
Yeah, I will mention it to them that they should probably do something.
Any other questions or comments from the public? Caitlin?
Caitlin, I don't see anyone else's hand raised, and there's nobody in the chat currently, so I think it's all set.
Okay, it sounds like there were a number of questions that were raised. Question about the underground utilities, question about the pump station, question from the fire marshal, the emergency access given the narrow road. So it sounds like this should be we should probably continue this public hearing to get some more comments from the town engineer and fire marshal and other town staff. And if the applicant wanted to submit anything on the underground utilities issues, that we need to do that. But it sounds the regulations, the default in our regulations is that they do go into that. So, any other questions or comments from anyone?
John Luss, Commissioner. Chuck, I think I'd like to see an alternate plan of 3 units, 3 houses, slightly larger lots, slightly larger homes, a little more money maybe, but I think 3 lots would ease a lot of the problems that we're talking about.
Can we also get a review by the fire department as per because it's a one-way street, it's a dead-end street, and how they plan to access the houses in case of emergency, and whether they're okay with the road width and the volume, the number of houses on the street.
Chuck Anderson, Chair. Yes, absolutely. That's the fire marshal. We would like comments from the fire marshal and the engineer. Certainly, we might ask. So there's any other input that we want to give the applicant before we continue this matter or close this matter for tonight, but continue the public hearing. Okay, so then we will continue this matter. Our next meeting, I believe, is July 17th. Is that correct, Harry?
Harry Smith, Town Planner, is the 16th.
16th, sorry. Okay, so we will continue this item number 2, this 4-lot re-subdivision to the July 16th meeting. Thank you. And we'll move on to item number 3, our third public hearing. That's Tidal Basin LLC, 46 Indian Neck Avenue, PDD modification, master plan amendment, residential development as a use in place of an approved hotel use.
Harry Smith, Town Planner. Mr. Chairman, do you want to take up the site plan modification and coastal site plan, old business number 1, at the same time, since they're intimately related?
Yes. So the applicant can proceed with both of those. And I guess we'll allow public comment on both as well.
Thank you.
Is the applicant ready to proceed? It looks like I see Mr. Burton here who's muted, and I guess Caitlin, you can unmute him. Who's representing the applicant?
Caitlin, I unmuted Megan. I'm not sure who else I should be unmuting. Okay, Joseph.
This is Megan Miles. Yes, so you can unmute Greg Burton, Jim Preddy, Joseph Seapot, John Cunningham, and I believe Ed Crowley. Yeah, you can see Ed Crowley's name. He's dialed in, but.
Keelan, can you put a screen share for me?
Caitlin, I'm sorry, I was not prepared to do that. What plans do you want me to pull up? Just the full plan set?
Yeah, I have the plans for the presentation on my computer.
Oh, okay.
So you just need to be able to co-host, right, Joe?
Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood. I thought you were asking me. You're a co-host, honey.
Okay, are we ready to get started?
Okay, is the applicant ready to proceed?
Yes. This is Megan Mott. Okay, so as you said, this is, checkers. Okay.
Yes, you may proceed. Checking industry.
So this is Megan Miles. I am an attorney with the Carmody, Torrance, Sandak, and Hennessy with an office at 195 Church Street in New Haven. And I am appearing on behalf of the applicant, just Title Basin LLC, which is the owner of property at 4-6 Indian Neck Avenue. With me tonight is Greg Burton, a colleague of mine at Carmody, also Jim Preddy of School of Engineering, Joseph Seapot of Joseph Seapot Architects, John Cunningham of TEC Landscape Design, and Edward Crowley on behalf of Title Basin LLC. Before I get started, I just want to note for the record that we submitted copies of our certificates of mailing to all abutters within 100 feet, previously submitted that to staff, and also we've been self-publishing notices of hearing like we used to do before these times. So we also did that and submitted a copy to staff. So that's also in the record already. There are 3 applications pending tonight. A petition to modify the permitted uses and standards of the Brantford River PDD that consists of 3 parcels, 2, 5, and 4-6 Indian Neck Avenue. Also pending is a site plan modification for 4-6 Indian Neck Avenue that has been approved for a 34-unit hotel, and we have submitted plans to permit 30-unit multifamily residential development. And also pending is a coastal site plan for same. We were before you guys back on May 21st for presentation reviews. So because you've already seen this project, I want to keep things relatively brief, and I plan to just begin with a brief introduction of the property and hand it right over to Jim Preddy, Joe Seapot, and John Cunningham to review the plans. And then I'll take the mic back and dive into the particulars of the PDD modification and the coastal site plan with a goal of responding to comments specifically that we've received pre-application review and comments that we've received from staff. Yeah, so that's it. Oh, and I will also hand the baton after I speak, hand it over to my colleague, to Greg Burton, to address comments that we've received regarding the provision of affordable housing. So with that, Joe, if you could pull up the PDD map, that would be great.
Yeah, can you see my screen?
I cannot.
Kaylin, can you, let's see, how do I?
You should be a co-host. You should be able to click share screen, Joe. Harry Smith, Town Planner, at the bottom.
Bottom, let's see here.
It might take a minute to come up.
Also, Megan Miles for the record. I frequently forget to reintroduce my name, so do not hesitate to interrupt me when I forget to do that inevitably.
Is it working?
I'm just trying to. No, it usually has a.
Harry Smith, Town Planner, we've got you on as a co-host.
Yeah.
So you should see the share screen button down in the bottom line there with the chat participants and everything else.
Yeah, no, I'm normally, I got it up on my screen. I'm just looking for it now. Hold on. Okay, let's see. Boy. No, I'm just having a problem with that. I know where it normally shows up, and I don't.
Well, let's try. Caitlin, can we take him off as a co-host and put him back on again as a co-host?
Caitlin here. Joe, if you want to try again.
I also have the plans. If my computer is able to do it, I'm happy to screen share as well.
Okay. Yeah.
That was Megan Miles.
I'm sorry. It worked out last couple of times I've done this. I've had no problem with it.
Right.
Caitlin, Joe, I'm going to withdraw your co-host permission and have Megan give it a try.
Yeah, please.
Okay. Cheers. Did that work?
Yes.
The town planner,
Yes,
yeah.
it does.
Okay. Okay. So let me zoom in here. So this is the map of the Brantford River PDD. This is Megan Miles speaking. Right here, it consists of 3 parcels. Where I'm circling right here is 4-6 Indian Neck Avenue. That is the subject site for the 30-unit residential development and the approved hotel. Here, labeled as Lot 3, is 5 Indian Neck Avenue, and that is currently improved with Stony Creek Brewery. And right here is Lot 2, which is overflow parking for the brewery.
Chuck Dander's chair, Megan, excuse me, Megan. We can't see what you're circling.
Harry Smith, town planner. Megan, I think you would need to circle, put your cursor on the screen you're sharing, not on this display.
Okay.
Move over to the map you've shared, then that should probably work.
Right here. Can you see me now?
Not yet.
Can you zoom in?
I have zoomed in. You see me zooming in?
No.
Oh, I think it froze. Hold on. Oh, here we go. Now, can you see it zoomed in?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hey.
Yeah, right.
My screen share paused. Apparently, that's a thing it can do. So let's try this again. Okay. Can you see my circle now?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is 4-6 Indian Neck Avenue. This is the site of the approved hotel and the subject site tonight for the 30-unit residential development. This is the Brantford River right here along it. This parcel labeled as Lot 3 is the location of Stony Creek Brewery, and this parcel labeled as Lot 2 is overflow parking for the brewery. The train station is right here, farther to the west of Lot 2. That is outside the PDD, just noting it's located right here, and as everything is along the river right here. I guess my last comment is that 4-6 Indian Neck Avenue. It's a smaller site. It's 1.2 acres compared to the others, and that's it on the property. So I'm going to hand it over to Joe to start talking. I will scroll.
Scroll, yeah, Megan, if you could scroll down to the floor plan. Keep on going. Those are,
yeah.
That's
Although, Joe, I realize that this might have the incorrect windows since we received those comments after filing.
No, I think we have the right ones on there.
Okay, great.
Yep.
There we go.
Okay, here we go. Okay, so again, this is pretty much the building, not pretty much, this is the building we showed a couple of weeks ago when we presented preliminary. The building is 39,638 square feet, roughly 11,800 square feet per floor. We have a ground floor plan, which is going to be, majority of it is parking. We enter off of Indian Neck Avenue. And then on the lower level, we have a lobby area, some storage, and some miscellaneous mechanicals. Megan, if you scroll to the next plan.
Ooh. Okay.
Okay. So the majority of the floors consist of two-bedroom units, 2 studio units, and 6 one-bedrooms. The one-bedrooms are in blue, the studios in like the pink, and the 2 bedrooms in yellow. Each of the rooms have views of the Brantford River, with the 2 bedrooms and the 1 bedrooms having deck balconies off of there. If you go to the next, so what we're proposing is a building that kind of hugs, it's in 3 sections, hugs along the Brantford River, using traditional materials. We have stained cedar shingles, board and batten, double hung windows, and some natural wood accents with some miscellaneous stone along the base. If we go to the next one. So again, here are our elevations. We've taken this to the TCRB. We looked at a couple different options for windows. We haven't gotten back any response. So we're assuming that the double hung windows shown are approved, or at least suitable. And so that we have the west elevation is what you'll see coming down Indian Neck Avenue. The proposed south elevation is along the Brantford River. The lower area that you see in brown would be some wood screening elements to let the water flow freely throughout the base of the project. If you, Megan, you go to the next one. Again, the north elevation is what you would see from Amtrak or along the train lines, with those larger grayed out areas that would be your entry into your parking area. And then the east elevation would be what you would see from Monterey's. So that's the basis. Basis of the building is approximately 50 feet tall. So with a ground floor and 3 stories above. So it's pretty straightforward. Our circulation corridors along the Amtrak, along the Amtrak elevation for kind of a sound buffer, and again, all our views are towards the Brantford River in the south elevation. So that's just a little background of what we have here as far as the building goes. Pass it over to Jim, and we can talk about the site plan.
Jim Preddy, Criscollo Engineering. So if any of you recall the site plan from what was approved at the hotel, this doesn't look very different. Very minor changes. The building is roughly the same size and shape. The angle points have changed slightly in the bend of the building, but otherwise it's pretty much in the same place and the same size. On the north side of the building, that parking area got straightened out a little bit. We had some bends in it because of loading for the hotel, but we were able to get rid of that. On the south side of the building, there's a fire that we've made pervious pavers for various reasons. One of them being it could be sort of a walkway for the tenants of the hotel, of the apartment building, and also to allow water to pass through it. The only significant change to the site from what you've approved is that there was a secondary driveway that went directly under the building from Indian Neck Road, and that is no longer part of the program. But again, very similar, almost insignificant changes. There is Underground utilities, power from across the street will be coming under Indian Neck. There's water, sewer, and gas available on the road. We are storing stormwater underneath that parking lot and some underground storage galleries. There was a comment from the town engineer about adding another catch basin in that area, which is easy enough to do. We have no problems with that. The much talked about it back in the day when we came through the first time, the Amtrak pipe that we were trying to get around the building is actually going to stay in the location that it is. We're just going to replace the pipe, but in the same location, and the building basically will be built over it. The pipe will be independently structurally supported, and I believe that was part of a modification that we came back in for, was to allow for that. And that hasn't changed. And at this point, just to keep things brief, I think I'll hand it over to John. He can tell you what's been modified from his end.
Okay, good evening. John Cunningham, owner of TEC Landscape Design Incorporated. Megan, if you could, there you go, thank you.
Yeah.
Couple of very minor changes on the landscape. Number one, we've moved the trash area from the corner of the parking lot over to behind the building. I think it's a better area for it. I read through some of the staff comments. We'd be more than happy to introduce some bike racks on the area. My first go around, I just saw the memo today, was when we first come in the driveway, that area right to the right, which is 15 feet wide, I think would be a perfect area to probably store some bikes on. It's off the public way. It's not right out in front on Indian Neck Avenue, which I don't think it should be. And it's not on the pervious paver walkway, which I don't think it should be also, okay? Plant material on the site remained about the same from the last application. If you check my plant list, I made one minor misrepresentation at the last meeting. If we go down to the plant list, you see panicum, which is a switchgrass. We'll delete the Carl Fosteri grass, which is not truly a native, and move back to all panicum, both switchgrass and probably one of the varieties of switchgrass. I think that makes the if not all, the majority of the plant material that's on the property all native. I think it's going to be a terrific looking site. I think the building's terrific looking. I think the landscape, I think it's a nice addition to town. There's not much else I can really say about the changes to it. The one thing I did measure off of my plans, I believe the pervious paver walkway, fire lane, whatever you want to call it, is supposed to be 12 feet wide. That's what I have in my plan. So one question was whether it's 10 or 12. I think it's 12 feet wide. And our lighting, which we haven't spec'd out a supplier yet, but it will be dark sky compliant, an LED fixture with a full cutoff head. It'll probably be on a 14, 15, 13-foot pole, so it will not be a large light fixture. It's just going to illuminate the rear parking area of the property. But otherwise than that, this is really the plan that was approved when we presented the hotel in the same area. If there are any questions, you can ask now, or we can ask at the end of the presentation.
Chuck Candace Chair, are there are you complete? Is that it for your presentation at this time, or is there others?
Yeah. Chuck, I believe I've covered all the different areas of the landscape on the area.
Okay, I didn't know if Megan had or others from your team wanting to present at this time.
Oh yeah, this is Megan Miles. I have more to say.
Okay.
If John's done, I'll take it up from here. Okay, so I am going to end the screen share because it's easier for me to speak that way, but I can pop this back up again if any questions. Great, thank you. So diving into the specifics of the PDD modification, this revised site plan necessitates 3 changes to the approved standards and uses for the Brantford River PDD. One is to increase the permitted density to a minimum lot area of 1750 square feet per dwelling unit, to change the minimum floor area per dwelling unit to 650 square feet, and to slightly increase permitted FAR to 75%. That's the summary of the changes. As detailed in our application materials, there are a number of good reasons to support this request. The first, and I'm going to say three in total. The first is that this is undeniably the highest and best use of the property. The hotel is unfortunately not going to happen. It's not economically viable, so it's not going to be constructed. But the studies related to that conclusion also confirm that the highest and best use of the property is for 30 dwelling units. And that's really because this site is in such a unique position in that it is on the water and right next to the train station. Those are wonderful amenities for tenants that are very rare to come by. So that makes the site very valuable for multifamily residential. When we were before you for pre-application review, we received the comment that the commission desired a more mixed use for this site, incorporating a commercial component onto this site. So the feasibility study confirmed that the best is for multifamily use. My client would 100% put commercial on this site if it was feasible. I mean, he developed Stony Creek Brewery. Commercial use is what he does, it's what he knows, and he's very smart about it. But there's no demand for commercial use on this site. It's a poor site because it's a small site. I myself am concerned whether we could park it. We're already maxed out at parking for the residential. But this site will not support a commercial use. And that was done before the times that we're currently in right now, where the economy is going through very rapid changes, which have only further undermined the economic viability of commercial and retail uses. So I want to stress, if we could do it, we would. It's just not feasible for this site. And the Plan of Conservation and Development stresses that PDD developments should be crafted in a way that do not take away from the success of the town center. And I'm concerned that any addition of even a small commercial use to this site would take away from the continued support of the town center, especially right now. So to reiterate, multifamily residential is the highest and best use for this site. And it's a project that'll happen. Like it's exciting. The second point I want to raise is that from a technical procedural standpoint, this density change is an appropriate adjustment to align with what standards are already permitted in the Brantford River PDD. And my point is that this PDD is unique in that its uses and standards are almost entirely inherited from the Anchor Reef PDD. And the Anchor Reef PDD was approved way back in 2000 for lots that were significantly larger than what's now permitted in the Brantford River PDD. And I also want to reiterate for the record, my access to town hall records was limited. And so I had access to the original approval. So I'm basing everything off that. It's possible it was further modified, but I think we can assume that a modification is required to the density requirement. So in the Brantford River PDD, the permitted lot area is 50,000 square feet, while the Anchor Reef PDD required 130,000 square feet. So the permitted density to 1750 square feet per dwelling unit is an appropriate adjustment to align with the intent of uses in the area. Also, what underscores that the scale is appropriate is that this bulk has already been approved for the hotel. The building size is almost exactly what's already been approved. Which is an unusual circumstance. Usually that doesn't happen. And then the third point is that today we submitted, but we submitted a traffic letter from Lone McBroom, which reviewed the traffic study that was submitted for the hotel, confirmed that those standards are still good, and came to the conclusion that the change of use to 30 residential units would have a minor decrease on approved traffic. So this change of use improves traffic conditions from what's been approved. So my third and final point about why this change of use is appropriate is that it is wholly consistent with your new Plan of Conservation and Development for three reasons. The first is the purpose and intent of PDDs. The POCD is clear that PDDs should be a tool to, yes, encourage exciting development with flexible standards, but also to encourage development that's actually going to happen. It's not aspirational standards for what Brantford wants. It's unique developments that have a likelihood of success. And so that really does consider the market demand for the uses, which is why residential should be approved for this site. Also, for PDDs, they want to encourage pedestrian-friendly mixed-use areas. And the Branford River PDD right now is wholly commercial. It has the brewery. So by putting a residential use across the street, what that creates is a mixed-use, pedestrian-friendly corner and environment in PDD, creating a village-like atmosphere, putting boots on the ground, people walking around those that live in those residences, starting to use the town center. Which is exactly what the DOCD contemplated for PDDs. Further, I think you guys are already sick of hearing about this. It promotes transit-oriented development. This site, it's right next to the train station. This is exactly what was contemplated. Apartments for people to live in, get to know Brantford, take the train to work in New Haven or Stamford. And then finally, the third thing that the POCD encourages is to further housing choice and opportunities. And the housing choice and opportunities is a town that's not just single family homes. It's a town that has places for people to live who are young professionals, who are older residents of the community who no longer want to be burdened with the costs of maintenance of a home. And apartment units provide that housing diversity. So by approving, this is a comparatively small development, is 30 units on an acre right next to the train station. Permitting those units provides a level of housing diversity in this area of Brantford, which the POCD encourages. So that's it for my notes on the PDD modification. I'm going to now address the coastal aspect of this site plan. We can actually pull back up the site plan if that's helpful to the commission, but I can dive back in as well. Do you want me to share screen again? Let me see here. Share screen. Give me 1 second. Okay, great. Can everyone see my screen?
Harry Smith, Town Planner, yes, we can see it.
Great. Okay, so I'll stick with this one. To remind the commission, the town is constructing a boardwalk right here. And the applicant has already committed to providing a access easement along this corner of the property to access the boardwalk and contributing funds towards the construction of that boardwalk. This walkway here is private, but it is open to the residents of the building. So we received comments during pre-application review that increase the coastal access, whether it's for the public, for the private, increase it. You have some green space here, increase it. So this building has been very thoughtfully designed to maximize the space available for the residents to enjoy the waterfront. There's ample space here for private coastal amenities. This is in addition to the fact that every single unit will have waterfront view. We have competing interests though, where this walkway is also required by the fire marshal for fire access. And so, for example, so we have to keep it completely clear and accessible at all times for the fire trucks. And so, for example, in our revised site plan, we added a couple benches here, as requested by the commission. We added some benches, and we received a comment from the fire marshal. His only comment: "I'm concerned about anything on that boardwalk. Keep it clear because it's necessary for fire access." So we have to keep this clear, but also encourage our residents to use this space. And so we've done this in a thoughtful way where there's ample space, green space here available, opportunity to put picnic tables, benches, and we're concerned about putting those actually on the site plan, because when you put them on the site plan, then you're stuck with that. A couple of years go by, and this is great for some other different type of coastal use. We'd have to come in here, try to at least go staff, get a minor modification of the site plan. It doesn't allow the fluidity and variety that the current coastal resources should encourage. So That's that. So I'm currently done. I'm going to hand it over to Greg, but before I do so, I just want to acknowledge that I believe a petition was filed in opposition to this application. By our internal review, as far as we can tell, none of those signatures are within 500, none of the signatories on property within 500 feet of 2-5 or 4-6 Indian Neck Avenue. So we do not believe that petition triggers a requirement for a supermajority vote. And the petition itself, but even regardless of that, the petition itself, the vast majority of the signatories signed out of concern of traffic. And I believe the top header said that they were opposing on the basis of traffic congestion and a third point that I'm forgetting. But submission of our traffic letter today confirming that traffic will actually be slightly reduced from existing approved conditions should hopefully negate the neighbors' concerns about any congestion that may result from this development. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Greg Burton to address comments that we've received regarding the provision of affordable housing.
Hi, this is Greg Burton. I'm also with Carmody, Torrance, Sandak, and Hennessy, representing the applicant. The reason that I'm speaking on this portion of it is that actually about, excuse me, about 80% of my practice is in the development of affordable housing on behalf of for-profit, non-for-profit, and other developers. So I have a lot of experience in the affordable housing area. And actually, I'm often the one who's before the zoning commissions with an affordable housing application where we are trying to create new affordable housing in communities in Connecticut. So we hadn't anticipated an affordable housing component of this application initially, and during the informal review, we heard the commission's comments and their request for affordable housing. We were skeptical about that, but we did go back, do the analysis, look at whether we could incorporate affordable housing. And what we determined, and this was our suspicion, but we did take the time to work this through, is that we simply don't have sufficient economy of scale in a 30-unit development to do on-site affordable housing. So this development is a small-scale residential development at 30 units. There is a reason why most multifamily developments, affordable or non-affordable, are north of 50 units, and that's to create economies of scale. This is a smaller multifamily development, and what it relies on from a development standpoint is that this is in a very desirable location for the development of residential housing. And so the rent levels for this property will support a 30-unit development. If we were to provide affordable housing units in this development, it would reduce the rental income from those affordable units by about 30%. That could be as much as $7,000 or $8,000 per year per unit in reduced revenue. And again, with a smaller scale development, we simply don't have the economies of scale to absorb that revenue loss. The other challenge with doing a small number of affordable housing units, so for example, if we were talking about 10% of the units being made affordable, we'd be talking about 3 units that would then be subject to the requirements to comply with affordable housing. That includes certifying the incomes of the tenants, recertifying those tenants every year, reporting on those certifications. It also means marketing those units to qualified individuals. Affordable housing has to be marketed pursuant to an affordable housing plan. So there has to be an affordable housing plan that's created, maintained, monitored, and that marketing is done in accordance with that, including maintaining wait lists and those sorts of things. That's a level of operational burden that for 3 units is exceptionally difficult to do. Even if we were talking about 20% of the units, even at 6 units, that's still a very burdensome operational requirement for 6 units. So typically when we're doing affordable housing developments that are in the 30 to 40 unit, 30 to 50 unit range, we're actually looking at subsidized housing in that context. So we usually have projects that are receiving state funding, and those projects tend to be 80% affordable or even 100% affordable. When you have that level, that number of affordable units, then you have an affordable housing property manager. All of the property management activities are conducted in consideration of the affordability requirements. This project at 30 units has no on-site management. So that's another thing that oftentimes will be available in a development that has a higher number of affordable units. Again, 6 units is not enough to justify that expense or to carry that expense. So as we worked through this, it became clear to us that it's simply, first off, not financially feasible on a 30-unit development on this site to be able to do affordable housing, and also the number of units that we'd be talking about would make the operational burdens too much for the site to manage. There was a note, excuse me, in the staff report about 830G, and as this commission is fully aware, 830G applications are a different beast altogether. And in an 830G application, all of the standards for zoning are set aside unless the concern is a health or safety issue. And so if someone were to come in with an 830G application, they wouldn't be doing so consistent with the existing standards. What we're doing here is to maintain a development that is consistent with the existing standards. We have had to modify that because of the size of this particular parcel on a density basis. That's simply a matter of the size of this particular parcel. Really nothing more, and it's the only way to be able to utilize this site for that best use. At the end of the day, if this project were forced to have affordable housing units because it is not financially viable and because it's not operationally viable, if the application was forced to have affordable housing units on site, unfortunately, the developer will not be able to proceed with the application, will not be able to develop residential units on this site. And because the hotel is not a viable use either, the property will remain as it is, which is an industrial building, not anywhere near the best use for this riverfront site, and especially not in consideration of the town's plans for the boardwalk along the riverfront. The other thing that I want to address, that's on the feasibility of trying to incorporate affordable housing units. But the other important consideration here is that the town of Brantford doesn't have a regulation that requires affordable housing in this zone for this site. And so, it feels to us as though requiring affordable housing in this application is sort of an arbitrary approach. What we think really ultimately, we support creating affordable housing in towns is a very important goal. It's set out in the state statutes. There's a whole variety of public policy reasons for supporting that. It builds greater, more diversity and more vibrant communities. But we really feel strongly that the way to do that is to create zoning regulations that provide a structure for that. And other towns have done that, where they have they've undertaken the work to do the study to figure out what makes sense, what the smart ways to incorporate and encourage affordable housing into the community are. And when those regulations are adopted, then all developments are on the same playing field. So everybody is abiding by the same requirements and the same obligations. Whereas if it's sort of just a condition that's imposed on a particular development, there's an arbitrary nature to that requirement. One development is required to provide affordable housing, a different development isn't, and that's really not the best way and not a fair way to create affordable housing, which is, as I said, a very important goal, but it needs to be done in a consistent way that treats all applicants or all applications fairly within their respective zones. The staff report noted the inclusionary zoning statute 8-2I, which is actually the statute that's usually used and empowers towns to create these inclusionary zoning requirements, to actually set up an affordable housing requirement, to provide, for example, fees in lieu, to set the parameters, at what number of units will we require affordable housing units, how many will we require. That requires some study and some understanding on a town-by-town basis to understand the ways that make sense in the particular town to require that. I took a look back at the statute because my understanding of the statute was always that this is what allows the town to create those regulations. It was interesting to me that the staff memo mentioned imposing this as a condition of approval in the development. And I noted that the statute only references conditions of approval in the context of a special permit, special exception, or subdivision plan. Otherwise, it's the statute empowers the creation of zoning regulations or ordinances. It refers to conditions of development only with respect to special permit, special exception, or subdivision plan. Again, that's 8-2I. So I'm not sure that a condition of, certainly if it was a special permit, special exception, or subdivision plan, then I think that statute does permit the imposition of affordable housing as a condition, but I'm not sure that applies in the context of a PDD.
Well, Mr. Burton, don't you agree that a PDD is a text change? It's a change to a text. It's not a site plan. It's not a special exception. I mean, that is part of that. It operates as the functional zoning regulation for the development. Am I missing something?
Well, as I said, I think it's not clear. It certainly says it can be imposed as a condition of the development, but our application is to create the PDD modification that we've proposed. I don't think it's clear. It certainly is clear. It says a condition of development in the case of special permit, special exception, or subdivision. There aren't any cases, as far as I know.
Sure, but you're adding a different use to your PDD. You hadn't proposed apartments or condos or full-time residential uses. It was commercial use, and now you're adding residential as a new use to the PDD, which is a zoning amendment change, I believe.
Actually, if I can, this is Megan Miles for the record. I just want to jump in. Residential use is actually already permitted in the Brantford River PDD.
Correct.
We're requesting to modify the density that it's permitted.
Correct.
Yeah, Commissioner Andrews, I don't mean to suggest that the commission doesn't have the authority to do that. I'm just saying that the statute is unclear on that. And my point is really just that the way that I've always seen 8-2I utilized, and I think what the real intention of that statute is to create programs like have been created in the city of Stamford, where the town has adopted a set of regulations that requires affordable housing in multifamily developments in particular zones with particular requirements, that sets out all of those programmatic components, including fee in lieu. For example, when you have, for example, in Stamford, when you have a project where the economies of scale don't work to include affordable housing units, then those regulations create a fee in lieu program where you can make an alternative. So all of those things, and the point is that those things then are all applied on a uniform basis.
Right.
And so I take your point absolutely. I don't think that it is clear. I don't think that there's a clear limitation here. It's just not what's typically contemplated by that statute. But I understand your point that you could look at this as a zoning amendment, as a text change, and consider that to be a regulation change. It's again just unclear. But I think the real goal of the inclusionary zoning statute is the creation of these programs, the creation of a uniform approach to affordable housing that will, again, then the most important thing is to treat all of the applications and all of the applicants fairly, so that everyone is subject to the same requirements and it's not an arbitrary condition that's imposed in some cases and not imposed in others. I sort of alluded to it in talking about that, but most of these programs do allow for a fee in lieu when the scale is such that it's not feasible or viable to include affordable housing units on site. Obviously, we don't have that in Brantford, but we did a lot of thinking about this and how we could support the development of that kind of a regulatory program. My understanding is that the commission has applied to the state for financial assistance to do a study on affordable housing. I believe that those grants are $15,000 toward the cost of doing that study. The applicant is prepared to offer a $5,000 contribution to supplement that the creation of that affordable housing study. And again, that goes back to, we genuinely understand and believe in the need to create affordable housing, but we also, we know from our own analysis that it doesn't make sense to do it in this development, and it would prevent us from being able to do this development if that condition were imposed. But we want to do what we can and what we think is reasonable and appropriate to support the development of a uniform approach to affordable housing that will help the town create more affordable housing.
Chuck Anders, Chair, and I don't know, and I think that's certainly a fair point, Mr. Burton, that whatever standard you have should be equally applied to different developments. And I don't know if you're aware of that they are in the coffer, because you had your informal presentation to us for your PDD amendment. We've had two other developers come in with informal presentations for PDD amendments. And frankly, we said the same thing, that, or at least some of the comments we made in each of those cases is the affordable element. So one of the things I think that I'm certainly interested is developing some sort of uniform standard that we can apply, because I agree with that. As a matter of fact, and we sort of put everyone on notice, not just you, but them too. So, since we're within the context of a PDD where we sort of write your own reg, I would be, interested in doing that would not just apply to you, but to others, because we've had similar discussions, and certainly in the state of Connecticut now, and what is going on with sort of development and the pressures we get from all sorts of angles from the state, from 830G developers or whatever, it is very important for the town to have to make a statement about affordable housing. The law was amended to require that we have an affordable housing plan. So it is certainly something that we have been consistently mentioning to all developers that have, frankly, it's more appropriate perhaps in the multifamily development like you have. But I understand that maybe the scales in there, a fee in lieu of is appropriate or whatever. But that is something, at least personally, and I won't speak for myself, it's something that I am interested in, and right now, and shame on us for not having it in place, but all these PDDs are coming in now for lots of residential units, so we could develop it in the context of that. And I think, it would be unfair if we impose it on others and we didn't impose it on you as well. I mean, it works both ways. So in any event, that's just to let you know what else is going on. But what my thought process is, give you guys the chance to address that if you'd like.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And certainly, that's part of that consideration. And there may be, I know in some of the other applications that you have that are pending or coming forward are larger developments that have more units. And, and there are kind of break points where affordable housing units can be incorporated into a development that has a certain amount of scale. So once you reach a certain scale, then you can absorb those affordable units more readily into the development. So I think the challenge for the commission, and I hear what you're saying about if you're asking other applicants to include affordable housing in their developments, that you also are asking us. And so that's an attempt to do what's kind of being done arbitrarily, but to do it on a uniform basis. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm just describing the situation is that it is arbitrary because we don't have a program. And so the commission is doing its best to try to do that in kind of a relatively uniform way. And so I do appreciate that. But I think the situation from our perspective is that our development, and I would say too, any other developments that are in that, 30, up to 30 units, they're probably going to be in the same position that we are, which is that you can't, it's very, very difficult to make the economies of scale support those units. That may be a very different case for units that are 50 developments, and it's an even much different case when you get to 75 and above. 75 and above tends to be kind of, that tends to be the scale, kind of critical mass, we'll say. 75 units and above tends to be kind of critical mass for the incorporation of affordable housing units. And so there's a lot more flexibility at those levels. So, the challenge again without a program is that, what is the right requirement, even if the commission is going to impose a requirement without having a uniform regulatory requirement, what's appropriate for a 30 unit development. And our suggestion to you is we can't build this if we have to include affordable housing units. It won't get built. It is not financially feasible. And so what we're offering is to, we heard the commission, we support the creation of affordable housing. That's why we're offering to make a contribution to a plan to get regulation, to get a study done so that the commission can be informed about what the right levels are and how to require affordable housing in what different contexts. And probably most importantly, to provide structured alternatives. So when you do have an applicant who has a development that is in the 10, 15, 20, 30 unit size, in that small size, that you have a program that provides an alternative. So like a housing trust fund, fee in lieu type of a program.
Yeah, no, and I'm not disputing it. Maybe a fee in lieu is appropriate for underserved. You mentioned Stanford. Do you know, and my understanding is that 10% of the units of a multifamily development in Stanford has to be below market. But I don't know if they have a number of they have a threshold. Does it say, it doesn't apply if you're under 30? I mean, I don't know. I'm aware of Mansfield. I think they say any unit over any over 10, there's a affordable. But I, we haven't explored this as much as certainly we'd like.
Yeah, and I think I'm not positive on Stanford right off the top of my head. I just know that they do have a requirement. I think it's 10%. It's 10% of the units. I think it only applies in the central business district. Okay. And I think it's developments over 10 units. Megan, do you happen to know? I think that's right. They're also just in the process right now of overhauling their entire program. After they now have almost 20 years of experience with the program and of learning and adjusting. So for example, one of the things I think, that drives the requirement or the imposition in the central business district is that Stanford has a much higher rental rate than virtually anywhere else in the state, for those downtown, buildings. And so, that helps to support, so it may even be that the requirements are, that the appropriate approach is different levels of requirements depending on the different areas. Now, obviously, Brantford's doesn't have that huge differential like Stanford does, the central business district and then outside areas. But that all serves to underscore the importance of having a well thought out plan that's supported by data and imposing the requirements on that. And I know there's always the pressure of, but what do we do right now? And I understand that. And unfortunately, I think, my response to that is that more than anything, the answer to that is that, it's sort of a hurry up, like let's do it and get into it. And that's where, contributing the money to do that study and get that ball rolling is what we think makes sense.
Sure, I understand that. So the fee in lieu of component, in this case, you're saying whatever, but it could be just something affordable, whether it's a study or something else. No, I understand that, and I understand. Okay, are there other comments that you guys want to make? I didn't want to interrupt too much there.
That's all that I had, Megan. So if there's anything else that you have in.
This is Megan Miles. Nope, that's it. I'm also done.
Thanks. Then at this point, we'll turn it over to our, let's have a summary of our staff reports and questions from commission, and then we'll open up to the public. So Harry, can you go through staff reports? I don't know, Harry or Caitlin, who's in charge for this?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. I'll go through the staff comments. I'll just note that we did send this off to the planning consultant who's been working with us over the last few months, Cloud Harbor and Associates, John Guskowski, who's a AICP planner, and Mike D'Amato, I believe, is also an AICP certified planner. And they provided the staff comments. I'll just briefly go over a few things. There were some other comments from other members of town staff as well. I would concur that the site plan changes are very minimal. Moving on from there, just note that we did receive the petition that was alluded to in the presentation, and I can share my screen quickly. This was signed by, I believe, 88 folks. I have not analyzed this. It's entirely possible that, and probably highly likely, it won't reach the threshold of signature by 20%, owners of 20% of the land area within 500 feet of the area that is subject to the application, which is basically a donut. So there's the whole of the donut, if you will, is the land subject to the application. There's a 500-foot donut around that. And you have to look at, we did this analysis for Parkside, if you recall. So that is something I will do as soon as I can, and would suggest that the commission probably continue the public hearing to allow that to happen, if for no other reason. So I believe I sent this to the commission, or I will. It is actually in the Dropbox, so it can be viewable by anybody at that location. I did send off to the commission, I believe yesterday when it was complete, the report from the consulting planner, as well as a cover memo with some additional comments from myself. Those comments had to do with comments from 4 folks who need to get referrals for the PDD modification. And they are the town engineer, the town sanitarium, is the East Shore Health District, the police commission, the chief of police sent the referral request, excuse me, and the fire marshal. We did get a few comments from the town engineer. They were also received the site plan application for its review under the floodplain management order. So that was included in the report to the commission. Essentially, the town engineer is looking to maintain conditions of the previous approval with respect to the maintenance of the drainage line, the Amtrak drainage line that was mentioned earlier. He is also looking at a catch basin. I think that was discussed. He had a comment with respect to the floodplain management ordinance about all mechanical electrical equipment elevated to the base flood plus 1 foot, and all construction must conform to the floodplain management ordinance. He also is recommending, even though it's not directly related to the development proposed here, the installation of a rapid flashing beacon at the crosswalk between the brewery and the overflow parking lot, which is just south of the train tracks as it intersects Maple Street or Maple Avenue. I can't remember the name of it. So that's something that could be hopefully considered by the applicant. There's a lot of traffic in the area late at night, difficult visibility sometimes, and a lot of pedestrian movement across Indian Neck Avenue. Again, we did not receive any written comments from the fire marshal or the fire chief. However, the Chief Mahoney did say that he was concerned about potential for debris equipment, residential furniture, what have you, on the paved fire access in front of the building, between the building and Brantford River. I think there probably is room, as long as you're off the access, for some recreational features, possibly, such as benches that were mentioned earlier, but I'll leave that to the commission's discretion. We did not receive any comments yet from the chief of police, and we did not receive any comments yet from the East Shore Health District. So moving on to the, I just would mention, we did send this off for comments from Department of Energy and Environmental Protection with respect to the coastal site plan that was submitted, and I received nothing back yet. So that referral was sent out 35 days ahead of this public hearing. This application was also referred to the Town Center Village District. They reviewed it at the meeting on June 10th, and they voted for approval as presented to the commission. I did include the minutes so you could see the substance of the discussion at the Town Center meeting. So at this point, I'd like to move on to the consultant's staff report. I'll note for the record that the version of this that was included in the Dropbox 24 hours ahead of the public hearing inadvertently did not include page 2, which is labeled site plan comments. We've had issues with humidity in our copier, and as the thing was scanned in, it gobbled 2 pages instead of 1 and did not, even though the hard copy had it, the scanned copy did not have it. So just quickly summarize that. There were comments about bicycle parking, which was noted before by Mr. Cunningham about he's already looking at a location for that. Quickly, there's a mention about lack of any outdoor amenities for building residents. About a discrepancy in the width of the pervious paver walkway, 10 feet, 12 feet. Again, noting that the fire department should comment, which they haven't formally yet, about the walkway and their emergency vehicle access that provides. Also, a little comment about lighting details, which will certainly need to be addressed. And just noting that the issue of coastal access was addressed previously in the hotel proposal a couple of years ago, and that is being currently reviewed by DEP. Flipping over to comments from the consultant about housing density and affordability. They really just note that this is really at the discretion of the commission. I just would like to emphasize that. The commission's really acting in their legislative capacity with respect to the PDD modification, the master plan amendment. As was noted, I think, by you, Mr. Chairman, that this is really a zoning regulation change, a zoning map change as well. So that's the context for that. They did provide some background really on issues that could be considered there, with respect to density, and also that it's not really the density per se, it's looking at whether this proposal makes sense in this location with the design that's proposed here. They also get into the affordable housing possible requirements that were discussed at length a couple of minutes ago. Just note there that, emphasize again that we are considering this as one of 3 PDDs, and the issue's been brought up with all 3 projects so far, at least at the preliminary level. A couple other comments here about that. I appreciate the comment about possibly having a fully fleshed out zoning regulation for inclusionary housing. One way to address that, unfortunately, is to really stop now and go do that and come back and look at these proposals again. I don't think that is really the best way to go about it in the sense of holding projects up. So I think it really is preferable to kind of look at it now. I'm certainly happy to work with our consulting planners and providing more information so we get a better idea of how other towns are handling this. I don't think we necessarily need to invent the wheel again. There are a lot of communities that have, several communities at least, that have done this. Bring that expertise back to the commission at a subsequent meeting and have a little more informed basis to for you to make a decision. So I think I'll stop there. Unless there are any other questions.
Chuck Anders here. Thank you, Harry. Questions, comments from commission members? If not at this time, then we can open it up to the public. Do we,
I see two hands already, at least.
okay, so let's, I don't know is Harry or Caitlin, you guys take over and recognize your public.
I'm going to defer to Caitlin, who's been doing such a fine job at recognizing people and muting them. So.
Okay, so the first person I saw was Gia Polio, so I'm going to unmute her first.
Hi, thank you for presenting the information tonight. If you can just provide a little bit more clarity on the traffic study that was presented. Is it in Dropbox? And also if you can summarize how you think it'll reduce the traffic flow from the proposal of the hotel. Myself and Patty Dugan started the petition. It's already a very congested area, especially at that corner. So the concern is potentially 30 to 60 cars, depending if there's one or two people living in the proposed apartments. There'd be a lot more traffic. And to give an example, if you try to come out of Harding Ave or Terhune, it's very difficult at times based on the current flow that we have. So I'm curious to see or hear about the updated traffic study.
Chuck Andrews, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Polio. The applicant will have a chance to review that. And I understand the applicant just submitted the study today. I haven't reviewed it, and I don't know if it's in the Dropbox yet. And in all likelihood, I think we're going to continue this as a public hearing. So just as a heads up to the applicant, if you can either address it tonight or also, at a continued hearing if you want to amplify on that. And Caitlin, any other members of the public wish to comment?
Yep, there's going to be Caitlin here. 6 other people. I'm unmuting Patty's iPhone right now.
Hi, my name is Pat Dugan. Oh, let me turn on my video. Okay. Hi, I'm Pat Dugan. I do have a prepared statement because I don't do this on a regular basis, so I'm slightly nervous, but I have some things I'd like to share with planning and zoning. So I have lived in Brantford almost all my life, and I have called Harding Avenue my home for the past 23 years. I love Brantford, and I love living on the river. I would like to thank the planning and zoning for this opportunity to express my opinion and concern for the 30 rental unit complex proposed by Mr. Crowley. Since the developer is the same person as the brewery, it is important that you know life in my neighborhood has drastically changed since Stony Creek Brewery opened in 2015. On January 16, 2014, Brantford 7, which is a news source, quoted Mr. Crowley as saying that the noise should be no more than it is experienced already in this area, such as the Lobster Shack, which has live music in the summer, and the deck at nearby Nellie Green's. Last summer, a sound stage was set up at the Stony Creek Brewery for several weeks to accommodate live concerts. For one event, the overflow parking lot was full of vendors selling T-shirts and other items out of the backs of their vehicles to concert goers. The Indian Neck Avenue Bridge was lined with people in fold-up chairs, and the river was loaded with boats anchored to hear the concert. I was very concerned about their safety. I could also hear the music with my doors and windows closed and the air conditioning on. It certainly has not been the noise level Mr. Crowley described when he first explained to concerned neighbors what to expect at the new brewery in 2014. Mr. Crowley is kind enough to send a letter to his adjoining neighbors announcing upcoming large concerts. He even offers us a free beer if we can bring the letter to the brewery during these concerts. He does, however, explain that we have to buy tickets to get in. I have the 2-sentence letter if you would like me to read his idea of contact with his neighbors in Indian Neck. Now Mr. Crowley is ready to make his next footprint in Indian Neck. I fail to see how this rental complex or a boutique hotel, since he can change his mind, is a good use of this 1.24 parcel of land. This land, which is known as Paul's Wire, is located between the railroad tracks and the river that floods on a very busy curved street. I am one of 2 neighbors who took a petition around the neighborhood in opposition of this latest project. It should be on file with the Planning and Zoning, and we have heard about it tonight. The support we got was overwhelming. In 4 rainy evenings, I was surprised we got 87 signatures during this pandemic. People are concerned about the additional traffic, noise, flooding, density, and congestion that already exists here. Many neighbors thought they were the only people with these concerns. Others suggested a community garden or a park instead of another building. That would be a good use of land. As a taxpayer who now pays $8,500 annually to live in my house on Harding Avenue, I am angry that the noise forces me inside my home during the warm months. Sometimes I leave the area altogether while the brewery operates at an unneighborly noise level. The quality of my life has been negatively impacted by Mr. Crowley's 30,000 square foot footprint in Indian Neck. I am extremely concerned about his next footprint. I asked the Planning and Zoning to consider the number of units already approved in this very small area, such as Atlantic Wharf and Anchor Reef, and turn this idea that doesn't make any sense, turn it down. Enough is enough. Thank you.
Josh Andrews, Chair. Thank you, Ms. Dugan. Caitlin, other members of the public?
I'm unmuting Greg Ames.
Hi, this is Greg Ames, 273 Thimble Islands Road. I want to talk to you tonight as a member of your Clean Energy Committee. And I've submitted a written statement that I really appreciate if you all read through. But in the interest of time, since it looks like you're going to be here pretty late, let's see if we can't make this a little briefer. The statement we've submitted builds a strong case for charging for EV vehicles, for electric vehicles, in new projects in Brantford. We set a precedent last month by having this discussion about 1151 North Main. The applicant there saw the wisdom of this approach and has decided to add several charging stations to his development. What's changed since then, other than that person, is that we now have a standard from DEP to establish the appropriate number and to support the need for EV charging in developments in the town. DEP would, by virtue of the documentation that I've submitted to you guys, which again encourage you to look at, would encourage us to put some 4, and today it's encouraged, very shortly it'll be mandatory, I believe, by virtue of application of the building code when that's updated. Their standards would encourage us to have 4 charging stations, 240 volt charging stations in a development of this size. I would ask you to look at the nature of this. I think what you're building here is probably going to be a hotbed of people who are going to be looking for EVs. I think you're very likely to need a much higher density of charging stations in this development. And I'd suggest that you double the number that the Department of Environmental Protection is requesting. Again, I'll sign off with that and ask you please take the time when you're not tired and ready to go home, take the time to look at the statement we gave you and the backup information from the DEP. Thanks.
Chuck Andrews, Chair. Thank you, Mr. Ames. Caitlin? next. Who's next?
Can we interrupt 1 second? Harry Smith, Town Planner. I'll just note the submission, the written material from Mr. Ames is in the Dropbox, and I will forward it around to the entire commission so you have it directly available to you.
Thank you, Harry. Chuck Anders, Chair. Caitlin, next.
Bill Horn.
Hi, for the record, this is Bill Horn, 246 Pleasant Point Road. Everything I've heard tonight suggests that the river is going to be there the way it is now, something nice for the residents to look at. I know the commission is well aware of the predicted increase in sea level and the impact that can have on Brantford and on development in along the coast. I think that nobody's talked about the recommendation from the Connecticut Institute for Resilience and Coastal Adaptation that municipalities be planning for an increase in sea level of 20 inches by 2050. That's 30 years from now. I don't think the state plan of conservation and development necessarily governs what Brantford has to do, but I'll note that one of their policies in the recently revised plan is to minimize the siting of new infrastructure and development in coastal areas that are prone to inundation from sea level rise. The requirements from FEMA are you need to be a certain level above the current flood zone. But going forward, by 2050, that level may be almost 2 feet higher. So is it really prudent development to be putting residential right next to the river? Going from a hotel where if there's a storm threatened, your potential guests probably will either change their plans or, not reserve a place. The residents where those people are going to have to be accommodated somewhere. This is something that does need to be considered here, I think. Thank you very much.
Chuck Anders, Sarah. Thank you, Mr. Horn. Caitlin?
Jeanette Redensick.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Jeanette Redensick. I'm also a resident of the Indian Neck neighborhood on Harding Avenue. And I want to express my very strong opposition to this project for a 30-unit apartment building on Indian Neck Avenue. I'm opposed for two principal reasons. First, the site, as we've heard from others, is manifestly unsuited for a project of this scale and type. Beyond the inadvisability of situating 30 new permanent residential units on the floodplain, the project will have a substantial negative impact on the quality of life of those of us who live on the avenue and adjacent streets. The rules may say 100 feet, 500 feet, but we know that the impact of this project will extend far beyond those boundaries. Traffic and parking. Single point of ingress and egress onto a very tight area of Indian Neck Avenue with a loading dock right across the street. My second reason for opposing this project is that this developer has a record of presenting projects for planning approval with one set of assumptions, and then once approved, proceeding to operate according to very different standards. The Stony Creek Brewery and the subsequent history of that planning application are very relevant here. This developer has made our lives in the Indian Neck neighborhood, in the words of one of my neighbors, a living nightmare. The brewery planning application, as Patty pointed out, was presented as having a negligible effect on the residential neighborhoods surrounding the site, open till 8 or 9 in the evenings, small acoustic musical duos like the Lobster Shack and Nellie's. What did we get? Highly amplified music, deafening loud music. Weekends, weeknights, 10 p.m., 11 p.m., 12 a.m., after midnight, not just one night a week, several nights a week. Audible inside the house with the windows closed and air conditioners going. Completely deafening outdoors. Neighbors having to shout to one another over the fence. What did we get? We got a rock concert venue. Deafening music and hundreds of cars parked on our streets. 50 to 60 drunk kids with bottles on the bridge. Drunks fighting in the street till 2 a.m. This is not jazz on the green. This is not an occasional public benefit activity. This is week after week, day after day, year after year, without any apparent means of redress. The police told me this was not their problem, that this was a planning and zoning issue. I bring this history to the committee's attention because it speaks to the poor record of this developer and with regard to neighborhood relations, and demonstrates his lack of respect for our Indian Neck neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Caitlin, who's next?
Perry Maresca.
Perry Maresca, Economic Development Commission. And in 2017, the town completed the transit-oriented development study. One of the recommendations during the meetings was to build apartments within walking distance of the train station. On page 74 of this TOD, it says this type of development typically is compact, mixed use, and walkable, and it is increasingly attractive to a variety of people to live, visit, shop, or work. Page 83 says the overlaying zoning as proposed offers the same property owners new options that are intended to encourage redevelopment appropriate to the overall goals of the plan. These options include a wider range of allowable uses and increased density to help pay for development and suggest improvements, as opposed to remaining as an ID zone. In page 91 refers to the overlay area 1 waterfront. Very first listed is additional uses is residential. The EDC has long felt that business retention within town is our priority. The Stony Creek Brewery has been there for 5 years and has been a boom to the town. Many people utilizing there and going into the town to eat restaurants. The proximity to the train station in town center will draw these tenants and benefit the town restaurants and merchants if this apartment building can go through. So I thank you.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Mr. Maresca. Caitlin, anyone else here?
Yes. Mary Sampson, but I don't see an audio connection. I'm not sure how to get her comment. So until I figure that out, I'm actually going to unmute Jennifer Ryan. Oh, wait. I don't know.
I see a Mary Sampson. Okay.
Yeah, I don't see any option to unmute her audio isn't connected. Mary, if you want to type your comment into the chat, I can read it. I'm going to unmute Jennifer for the sake of time while we figure that out.
Hi, thank you for recognizing me. To follow up with what Mr. Horn has said, in a February 23rd, 2019 New Haven Register article titled, "Brantford creates a $1 million fund to counter sea level rise, likely the first in the state." It actually has a photo of the Meadow Street and Indian Neck Avenue underpass associated with the article. It says that one of the first projects from the $100 million fund would be to put in a tide gate to periodically close off the low-lying underpass at Meadow Street and Indian Neck Avenue at a cost of $313,000. So my question is, how then do you approve of any permit in that exact spot identified as such a problematic flood zone and requiring hundreds of thousands of town dollars to mitigate the flooding. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. Caitlin, who's next?
I'm still trying to get a comment from Mary, but her audio isn't working, and I don't know why. But other than that, there's other comments.
That's it for Chuck Ander's chair. Caitlin, that's it for no other member of the public's asking to be recognized at this time.
Harry Smith, Town Planner. I noticed that Mary Sampson is now signed on as Dave Sampson, and I think he has got audio. It's a little echoey. I'm not sure why that's happening, but
I'm so sorry. I just live over on Harding Avenue also. And unfortunately, I am a bit concerned about the project thinking of putting in. It is very different since the brewery came in. And I fear that there are so many people now walking in the streets. You have to be really, really careful when you go by the brewery. And now we're talking even more people probably walking to and from the train station, across the street to the sidewalk, because there is no sidewalk on the side they're on. And it's just, to me, it's actually incredible that they're thinking now of making it a residence. The hotel was bad enough, but a residence, I'm like, you're kidding, right? I'm floored, to tell you the truth. I know that I am more than 500 feet away, but 500 feet would be the middle of the river. I am probably about 1,000 feet away. But I'm 4 houses down on Harding, which I can tell you has been very, very already by individuals going to the brewery, parking, walking down our street with the concerts and things, stumbling down our street. So it really has already changed the neighborhood. And I can't believe they think to be putting in another entity that would really so much more change the neighborhood. So I really, I hope you think about that before you agree. Okay, that's about it. Thank you for waiting for me to unmute.
I understand. Thank you, Ms. Sampson. Caitlin, anyone else?
Yep, I'm Greg Tower.
Good evening. Thank you for the time here. Greg Tower from Terhune Ave, which would be directly across the river from the proposed site, from the proposed apartment here. There's been a lot of reference to the 500 feet. I would think, that's considering when there isn't a body of water between you. So the noise pollution and the light pollution should definitely be considered when considering the applicant's proposal. And to echo what my neighbors on Harding are concerning, the difference between a boutique hotel and a 30-unit apartment building has to be, I would love to see that traffic study, because I don't see how that could possibly produce less traffic. The ebbs and flows of the hotel business versus 30 permanent residents with 30 plus permanent vehicles trying to pull out on a very tight corner of Indian Neck with a one-way bridge and a loading dock making deliveries every morning during rush hour is not a good scene for that part of the town. And there was some confusion, I guess, with the first artist rendering that was shown, had the parking lot, exterior parking lot. It was a surface lot, but then it looked like on the site plan it was underneath the apartment. So I would just like some clarity on that, I suppose. I don't know if Megan can speak to that or not, but just curious if this is going to be a concealed parking lot or if there is a surface lot, which is going to be, is there going to be a privacy wall or any kind of barrier to, prevent noise pollution or light pollution from across the river? I appreciate your time and thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Chow. Caitlin, anyone else?
Yes, the number ending in 3893.
Hi, this is Carolyn Sires, and I just want to mention what Jennifer Ryan had said. When we were doing the research into other projects there, and we spent a lot of time with the Coastal Resiliency Plan, this one particular area has been cited. Should there be a major catastrophe, there would be concerns about safely evacuating the people already residing in that area. So I would ask for safety that there is a very detailed evacuation plan for the new residents that will be put there. And I take that very seriously in the name of safety. And that's something I'd like to see. Thank you.
Chuck Andrews here. Thank you, Ms. Sires. Caitlin, anyone else?
It looks like that is it.
Okay. Okay. Does the applicant, I think we're going to continue this as a public hearing. There's a number of things that have come up. The traffic is we haven't reviewed the traffic report. We haven't heard from Deep, and the flooding issue has been reemphasized. I'd be interested if they plan to comment in the letter. There's the affordable housing fee in lieu of issue that we alluded to that needs further review, and a number of issues that were raised. And frankly, when you keep a public hearing open, it's certainly not an obligation, but have an opportunity to talk with the neighbor if you'd like to do. Are there any comments that the applicant would like to make at this time?
Megan Miles. Yes, I will respond to some of the public comment briefly, understanding that this will be continued mainly because I might forget if I kick this 2 more weeks. So I think that the public comment can actually be classified into 5 different groups. The first is traffic and a request for a summary of the traffic report, which I think is a very fair and reasonable request. I myself am not a traffic engineer, but just for the public's reference, when the hotel was presented to the commission, part of that application included a detailed traffic study that assessed traffic impact of the hotel on the area roadways. And the project was approved with the finding that traffic would be appropriate. So when we filed this modification, we today submitted a letter assessing the prior traffic study, confirming the counts remain valid, and assessing whether the change in use of residential would increase traffic from what's been permitted, no change, or decrease it. And what traffic engineers do is they go out and they actually count cars. They count the cars that are going in and out, and then they base that on industry standards for the type of use, which is hotel or residential. Our traffic expert this time around concluded that, oh, I'm sorry, I want to stress one more thing. There's 39 parking spaces for this building. So the maximum there would be 39 cars, but it's also, this one's very unique because it's right next to a train station, and it's been proven that when apartments are next to a train station, the parking demand, let alone the traffic, significantly decreases because people tend to commute by using the train, or they don't have two cars, they only have one car. So, but this time around, I went on a tangent. The traffic engineer concluded that the weekday morning peak hours, or the morning weekdays, the total number of cars would decrease from 18 to 15. And for weekday afternoon peak, it decreases from 20 to 18. So it's a slight negligible decrease in traffic from what's been approved for the hotel. I know people come at me and say, you have 30 residences, how is it only 15, 18 cars? The traffic guys that go out and actually count the cars, who's actually getting in their car and leaving, and it negates the less. So that's my brief response to traffic. There was also, and also I want to stress why our original report was, and this is for the commission's reference, our original report was prepared by David Spear. And the reason our letter was submitted today was because David Spear has unfortunately been unavailable, and I kept on holding out hope that he would become available, but I eventually had to concede last week, and we reached out to Malone McBroom, and I wanted to make sure I gave them enough time to do a thorough analysis and put together a letter. So that's why that was submitted today. I just kept on holding out hope on David Spear, but it didn't happen. Okay, so next up is noise. Concerns about noise. I understand that there's concerns about the brewery and events. This is not a brewery. Residential use is the quietest use that could be permitted and implemented. And so I actually think these public comments underscore that commercial should not be increased at this corner. And it actually, if any use is to be permitted, it should be residential because that's a quiet addition. So next up was floodplain. A lot of concerns about this building being the floodplain. The applicant is also very cognizant of that, and this building has been, and we have to comply with flood ordinance regulations, but this building is actually an example of flood resilient design. For example, the residences are lifted up a floor. So the ground floor is actually just parking, and then the residences start a floor above, and that so that water can flow under the building in the event of one of those catastrophic events that people mentioned. Yeah, what else? Oh, pedestrian safety was also brought up. And this was approved at the hotel too, the site plan proposes at the crosswalk crossing Indian Neck Avenue from the proposed residential building. I think it's called an RRFB. It's the flashing beacon warning about pedestrians crossing the crosswalk. So that's going to be installed. And then we received the request in the town engineer's comments to also implement one. I think it's only 100 feet down the road in front of the brewery where people cross to the overflow. The applicant consents to that. So that will significantly slow down traffic on that street and corner, which should alleviate any concerns about pedestrian safety. The last one I had of 5 is energy efficiency and EV charging stations. I think if the commission likes, I might hand this one over to Joe and Jim. I don't believe EV charging stations can go in the flood zone. I think they might have to be elevated. I think that might be an issue. But if you want more information on that, I'm happy to hand it over to Joe and Jim about how the building is also designed to be energy efficient and further those goals. So that is all I have for the time.
Chuck Anderson, thank you, Ms. Miles. Anything else from any member of your team they want to add at this time?
I don't think so.
Okay, great. Any further questions or comments or remarks from commission members or staff before we end this and continue it to our next meeting?
I have one question.
Okay.
They've made mention of the boardwalk, which would be great, but I don't know of any specific plans or funding of that. Does anybody have any information? Because to me, that's very pertinent relative to any kind of camera approval and public access considerations.
Harry Smith, Town Planner. I might defer to Commissioner Lust about this. He's been working on it along, I think, with actually Jim Preddy's office, and I understand it is possibly been submitted for permitting at DEP. It certainly has gone pretty far down the road of actually being designed. Funding is a whole other story, of course. So I don't know if either one of those gentlemen have anything further to add to that.
John Lowe's commissioner here. You're pretty accurate, Harry. It's still in the permitting stages, but it's definitely something that needs to be considered and planned for in the area.
My only concern is that this is something that might take 2, 3, 4, 5 years to get implemented, and in the meanwhile, we're limiting public access along the riverfront. You know, I would, at a minimum, want to see at least conditional public access allowed on that roadway until which time the boardwalk was built, and then perhaps close it off to the public. But right now, I think what's provided is just severely limiting. So.
Okay, understand. Thanks, Marcy. Any other comments or remarks from commission members or staff?
Town Planner Harry Smith, I take that the commission as a whole would like to see further information about affordable housing options, possibly how other towns have done fee in lieu, and does that make sense? Am I taking an accurate read?
Chuck Anders Chair, well, I kind of said so. And just so the applicant's aware, I mean, I think you properly point out why are you you should be consistent when you do this. I think you're right. You can't do it on you and not do it on others. And networks, you can flip that too, because you happen to be first. Lucky you guys. But we got 2 right behind you. And they're going to come in and they're going to say, well, you didn't do it for Mr. Crowley's project, so why are you doing it to us? So the reality is, I think we need to look at it, because if we don't do something with you guys, and I know you've offered something, and I understand that, then if I'm the other people that come in, you're saying, well, why should they do it and we didn't? And I understand they may be larger projects and there's ways to distinguish things, but it seems to me, even the things that you've said, over 10 units, you guys are over 10 units, for other towns, at least where something comes in. So yeah, I would like to look at this more, and maybe the fee in lieu of is appropriate. Certainly, we have affordable housing projects in town. We have Parkside. We have places that need money. So whatever. So a fund for for doing things like that might be so. Anyway, that's I would like to look more at that. I don't know about anyone else. Again, I'm kind of going off, but that's where we are.
May I make an observation, Chuck?
Sure.
Speaking. I have seen the ProPublica article that quoted, I guess, the Connecticut Mirror on the sort of problem that Connecticut has for subsidized housing. The problem is when stuff like that happens, or when legislation comes out, there's a tendency to do this sort of knee-jerk response to things. And part of the problem with zoning in general is that zones are drawn with very fat lines that don't necessarily account for finer grained details of reality. In this particular project, up against the train station, a train track, it's got a single loaded corridor, which is probably the most inefficient way you can build a building. It probably has a certain amount of robust construction facing the train track for the sake of acoustical properties. It's pretty penalized already. They have a marginal quantity of units, and the building is situated in such a way that it does not impose or impinge on the street. It's sort of neatly tucked in there. There's a lot of reasons why I would be hard pressed to try to turn this particular project into a subsidized housing token. Because I don't think we have a mature scheme or a mature plan, and to impose that on this particular project with everything it's got against it, I just think it's like one more unnecessary hurdle to have to jump.
And Joe, if I can respond, I think factually you may be accurate for this project, and that's why the fee in lieu of is more appropriate probably for here for all the reasons Mr. Burton said. The scale, is there. I'm not questioning that, but I think there should be a component. This is 30 units. It is more than 10 units. It is something, and it is something that I think would be appropriate for us to look at. But we can discuss it afterwards. And maybe it isn't. Maybe, you've heard what he said or whatever, but I think that it's certainly something we haven't explored. And I am frankly very concerned if we say, you guys do nothing, and then we got two right behind us, we're going to say, well, you let them off. I think we do need to have some sort of consistent thing, and that could be a fee in lieu, just to do for open space. We just did it tonight. We're not going to require open space for the Brainerd Ward four lots subdivision. What we do, we have a fee in lieu of open space because it's appropriate once you have a certain threshold. So that concept is, and you can do it fee in lieu of another things too. So that's something. The reality is, I know you can say, the reaction, whatever, but there's a lot of legislative changes. There's lots of pressure on towns to address affordable housing. And even if it's a little bit, it's something, I want to show that we're doing something and do it in a way that doesn't hurt economic development if we go there, because, who knows where we're going. But also, is reasonable. And that means obviously doing less than you would do for 830G, because if someone wanted to do an 830G application, they just file it. So you can't do too much. I understand that. I understand the realistic constraints here. But I think we got to do something. And we got to have it as part of our affordable housing plan, which we have to have, according to the legislature, by the end of next year, what we are doing. And so, and we've done some stuff. We've done, accessory apartments. We've done other stuff. But I think we need to be doing something. And it is unfortunate that these guys just happen to be first in line. But now's the chance, and we can turn it around fairly quick, I think. So, in any event, that's where I'm thinking. But who knows? I'm one person. Anyone else? Okay, so then what we'll do is we'll continue this matter as a public hearing into our July 16th meeting. So thank you very much.
Thank you all.
So that brings us then to, maybe what we can do is we can take up item number 1 of our public hearings, which was Russo Real Estate, 58 East Industrial Road, the special exception for the contractor's yard. I think there wasn't any, I don't think there was any public comment on that. So I think that may be something we can act on. Caitlin, I'm trying to dig up the staff report because you had recommended findings and conditions of approval for that.
Harry Smith, Town Planner. Caitlin, can you put that up so people want to see it? Does that make sense?
Sure.
The staff report?
Yeah, with the findings and conditions in particular.
Yeah, let's figure out how to do that. Everybody see that okay?
Harry Smith, Planner, yes. Yeah.
Wait, and before we get, I think the issues were, what were the issues? The issues, I had the question about the, whether they had enough stuff to park the spaces, and I think they do. It's in that area if they need to. At least they said they did. And I can't believe they moved to a new site. They didn't have, and be too small. The idea, I'm looking at this as, it's a contractor's yard, so you're going to have vehicles all over the place. But if you have good screening and you have it in the edge of the industrial zone, that's probably the best place. So those are the issues. There was the fence issue, black power coated chain link fence, or however we did that. That was, they were going to tweak on that. And I don't know if there were any landscaping or other findings we had to make. So anyway, go with it. Are there any other, before we have Caitlin just review the conditions, any other thoughts or comments by commissioner? Okay, Caitlin, why don't you go through it?
I just, I'm not sure this is the most updated version, but this is the one that's on the Dropbox, so I'll go with that. Okay, so the first condition is just a requirement for an as-built after construction is completed. I think that's pretty standard. Same with the second, that erosion control measures be installed and maintained throughout the project to the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer. That all of the construction, site work, architectural designs follow substantively what's presented with minor modifications allowed for staff approval by the town planner. And then prior to the issuance of a zoning permit or a building permit, submittal of a soil and erosion control financial guarantee. And the second one, oh, sorry, not yet. I've got ahead of myself. And that they'll be required to do all the grading and earth removal activities in conformance with the zoning regulations. 5 covers lighting. Like I said, I just had a chance to review that today, so I have a little bit more to add to this, and I'm not sure if it should be a separate condition or tacked onto this. But it's basically just that the lighting mount for one of the models presented shall not have an adjustable arm that's not permitted through the zoning regulations. That all non-essential lighting be turned off after business hours, only leaving lighting deemed essential for building security on. And that the maximum number of foot candles be adjusted to be within the requirements of the zoning regulations. And I point out 2 specific areas where the building material storage is and in the parking area. So I can tack that on to 5 as like an A and B or separate conditions. Either way, I think works. That the special exception approval for this expires within a year of this decision, unless it's renewed. And then prior to the issuance of a permit, all site work or an appropriate bond be established per section 9.6G, that a financial guarantee to ensure the survival of plant materials also be submitted. And then written confirmation from the fire department that provisions for emergency access have been satisfied. That's in relation to, there's a gate for along the fence, and I think they're probably just going to put in a knockbox or something like that, but just that I was going to leave up to the fire department for exactly what they needed. And then leaving some discretion up to the zoning enforcement officer to make sure dust is managed correctly. And that if any of the landscaping is damaged or dies off, that it's replaced in kind. And then just to address the fence, so a chain link fence shall be black coated and no fabric or the slats shall be installed. I think we agreed on that. And then Chuck, to address your concern about kind of the equipment being scattered everywhere, just the equipment associated with the contractor's yard shall only be within the vehicle storage area depicted on the site plan. And I think that's it. And that was 16.
So Chuck Anderson, so my understanding is on number 5, which is about the lighting, you added 3 sentences that I counted, and there was details about the lighting. Did you have those written out? Do you want to read them again?
Can I, Harry Smith, Town Planner, maybe it's better to put that under 4, so the lighting plan is revised before a building permit or a zoning permit's issued. I think exactly the way you said it, Kate, would work fine. And possibly also the other changes you mentioned. Lighting and the fence. If both those required changes were under 4 as C and D, that would probably take care of it. So those things are adjusted on the site plan.
Okay. That makes sense to everybody.
Okay, so the changes are to 4C. You're going to add the lighting changes to the plan, because that's what 4 is, right?
Right. There would be changes to the lighting plan to address the features, the adjustable arm mounting elimination, and the other things that Kate referred to.
Right, and then D was the
adjust the fence detail to consist of PVC coated black or dark green chain link fence without slats.
Okay, great. And then she did add the condition at the end that the equipment shall be stored within the vehicle storage area.
Vehicle equipment area, yep.
Right, okay. Okay, any other questions or comments by commission members?
Caitlin, I muted Joe Vaiso. He was the echo problem, so I can unmute him just to see if he has any comments, but it kind of cuts down on the echoing if I keep him muted, so.
Okay.
You are unmuted.
Joe,
are you there?
I was going to say about the fence and screening, that maybe not knowing everything, that not seeing everything, possibly leaving some of that up to staff to make an adjustment on the possible fence with the screening. That's all I'm saying.
Harry Smith, Town Planner, are you suggesting so that fence could be adjusted, what that fence consists of would be left up to staff?
They made a comment of that the trees and other things there and elevations were going to naturally screen out things, that maybe this fence is going to be more than what you needed. That's all I'm saying.
Oh, okay. I understand. I think they would like chain link fence anyway, and they did not want to have a decorative vinyl opaque fence. And I think it was a comment by Marcy. It might be beneficial to have a little window, if you will, so these could see in some degree. So that makes sense to me. Assuming that it's operating just the way it is. I mean, there is the off chance that somebody's going to do a very different kind of contractor's yard in the future, possibly. But at this point, it seems like Mr. Fisher is making an investment in the property, and that's we rely on how it's being operated at the moment. It does say vehicle equipment area, so you could limit any future activity to that kind of function for a contractor's yard rather than things that you may not want to see visible from pin oak. And there is the grade difference. So
you are unmuted.
Chuck Anders Chair. So what is the change?
The change is they had proposed a more opaque fence with slats. So I think the change is to remove the slats and have the fence be a little more invisible with the black or green polyvinyl coated fencing.
Yeah, my note was they have a black power coated chain link fence.
Yep.
So do we want to just say that? Or, I mean, Joe's suggestion is, do you want to leave it to staff? But if you're okay with that, why don't we just say what it is?
Yeah, I think it's fine the way,
okay.
Say adjust the fence detail to consist of PVC black coated chain link fence without slats.
Mm-hmm.
That works. Okay.
It's not
Okay,
PVC though. It's a black vinyl clad chain link fence.
Yeah, it's your PVC, sort of the polyvinyl chloride. It's the vinyl. That's typically what it is usually, but
I think a PVC is the way, you know,
Well,
Yeah, I think about the
It's a-
plumbing stuff as well.
vinyl clad fence, which if the coating on the chain link is a PVC composite, you know, I'm not aware, but the common term in the industry is black,
Powder coated?
no, vinyl.
Yeah,
or
vinyl
black-
coated.
usually it's vinyl coated, so that's, you know,
Yeah.
that's what I've seen before, but we all know what we're talking about, so I think it'll be fine. We're not talking about something painted, we're talking about something permanent, not, you know,
Yeah, exactly. Have them provide a spec.
right.
Okay, and that's in 4C or something, right? Before the, right?
Right.
Or 4D.
4D.
4C was the lighting, 4D was the fence.
Right.
Right. Okay, someone want to make a motion to approve this application with the findings and the conditions with the revisions we just discussed.
Chadwick moves to approve as amended.
Chuck Anderson, chair. Joe Chadwick's made a motion to approve with the amendments we discussed. Is there a second?
Second.
Chuck Anderson, chair. Marcy seconds. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll go through the list. Joe, no, well, I'm gonna miss. Where's I do this? Got to do this in order. Okay. John Lust.
John Lust, Commissioner, approve.
Joe Chadwick.
Joe Chadwick in the affirmative.
Joe Vayuzo.
Joe Vayuso approves.
Marcy.
Marcy Paluzzi approves.
And Chuck Anderson, I also approve. Okay, so that's approved. So then, getting back to our agenda, it's on the table here somewhere. Minutes. We have minutes from our June 18th meeting. Those been circulated. Harry, did you have any changes to that?
Harry Smith Town Plan. The only changes I would suggest are the words "to be" after to the 1, 2, 3, 4th line down where it says "to be held by remote technology." If you just
What page are you on?
Page 1, right at the beginning under the heading,
Oh,
where it says "to be held." Just get rid of "to be" and it'll be fine. It was held by remote technology as authorized.
okay. Okay, so everyone understand that at the first page, we're going to delete the words "to be." If that's okay, does anyone want to make a motion to approve the minutes as drafted with the deletion of the words "to be" at the top of page 1 for the Thursday, June 18th, 2020 meeting?
You are unmuted.
Someone make that motion.
Joe Vayuso approves minutes.
Okay, motion made by Joe Vayuzo. Is there a second?
Chadwick seconds.
Okay. Any further discussion? John Lust, are you in favor?
John Lust, Commissioner, in favor.
Joe Chadwick, are you in favor?
Joe Chadwick in favor.
Joe Vayuzo, are you in favor?
Joe Vayuso in favor.
Marcy Paluzzi, are you in favor?
Marcy Paluzzi in favor.
And Chuck Anderson, I'm also in favor. Okay, that's done. We're done with the minutes. Any correspondence?
There is one piece of correspondence. I do not have it with me at the second, but I will get it in a minute. I'm looking for Mr. Perito, who I do not see in the meeting any longer. We have, so I'm missing him on the phone, but I think he was actually present previously. We have
under other business.
Yeah, other business. So I don't know, I was hoping he would be explaining this while I was running for the correspondence item, but if you want to wait 1 second, I'll take a look, see what it is.
Okay.
And I was about to guess, it is a communication with the Connecticut Siting Council regarding a cell tower facility at 150 North Main Street. And they are in receipt of a request to modify it and swap equipment out. So that's a pretty standard thing. That is the correspondence we have.
Okay, thank you, Eric. Chuck Anders here. Okay, that brings us to old business. Item number one is the actually tidal basin. We considered that as part of the public hearing, and we'll continue that again to our July 16th meeting. Items number 2, 3, and 4 are Mariner's Landing. That's another PDD, residential PDD in the same area. So we may get some of the same issues. Well, we could get some of the same issues. And that's scheduled for a public hearing on July 16th. That brings us into new business, and that's the Yale University Horse Island Special Exception. And we've scheduled that for a public hearing also on July 16th. That brings us into other business. We have a discussion about interpretation of section 7.12B. And again, that was the matter that Mr. Perito was going to join us for, but he doesn't appear to be here. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. So I guess we can defer him. I gave my quick version of what my opinion was on this. And I probably, which is that I think we changed the regulation. The property's not conforming. It says 5-acre site area. That means lot area.
Yeah.
And that I don't see that they can expand unless they amend the regulations, which may be a good thing to do. But I can't interpret it in a way that would allow it. But maybe an amendment is appropriate. In any event, that was my take. I haven't, Mr. Perito isn't here. And we can review that with him at our next meeting if you'd like to, and maybe I'm missing something.
Okay.
So that brings us to item number 2. Anyone else had anything about that? Okay. Item number 2 is a time extension request for 99 Todd's Hill Road. What's that, Harry?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. We have a letter from Attorney Mingione, who's representing the applicant. And I'll just read the letter out quickly. It says, as you are aware, we represent Vigliati Construction with respect to the above referenced matter, which is 99 Todd's Hill Road subdivision. Please consider this letter as a request for a 90-day extension to record the subdivision Mylar. We request this extension because we are attempting to comply with the condition of approval requiring that the recipient of the open space allow public access to the property. If you should have any questions, please do not hesitate to contact either myself or Attorney Tim Lee. Thank you sincerely, Nicholas Mingione, Esquire.
Okay, so this is simply a request for a 90-day extension for filing the Mylar because they still haven't figured out who's going to get the open space.
Correct.
Okay. So anyone have any questions about that? If not, someone make a motion to approve the 90-day extension for filing the Mylar for the 99 Todd's Hill Road subdivision.
I'll make a motion to approve the extension as.
Motion made by Marcy. Is there a second?
Chadwick seconds.
Okay. Further discussion. John Luss, are you in favor?
John Luss, Commissioner, in favor.
Mr. Joe Chadwick, how about you?
Joe Chadwick in the affirmative.
Joe Bayuso, are you in favor?
Joe Bayuso in favor.
Marcy, are you in favor?
Marcy Paluzzi in favor.
And I'm also in favor. That brings us to item number 3, which is planner's report. Harry, do you have a planner's report or anything you'd like to report?
Harry Smith, Town Planner. Given the lateness of the hour, I won't go into any length other than to say that we, at long last, due to the assistance of our new assistant town planner, have revised zoning regulations and have received them from the printers. So we'll be getting those out to you with nice intact bindings. And I've also at the same time finally printed copies of the Plan of Conservation Development. So we'll give you all an individual copy of that as well. So I apologize for the extreme delay, but things have finally starting to right our ship here in terms of staffing, and hopefully we'll get it more little odds and ends like this in the future. So thank you for your patience with all of that. And with that, I will end.
Great. Chuck Anders here. Thank you, Harry. Caitlin, do you have anything?
No.
Okay. Okay, great. Anyone else have anything? If not, does someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
You are unmuted.
Joe Bayuso to adjourn. Approve.
Motion made by Joe to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Marcy seconds. Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? John Lust, you in favor of adjourning?
John Luster, Commissioner, in favor.
Joe Chadwick, do you want to adjourn?
Joe Chadwick in favor.
Joe Vayuzo.
Joe Vayuso in favor.
And Marcy.
Marcy Paluzzi, in favor.
Chuck Anders also in favor, and thank you, everyone, and I hope everyone has a nice 4th. Can't do much, but still the 4th. So good night, everyone.
Good night, thank you.
Thank you.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Brantford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BrantfordTV.org.